So we should be live now.
All right. Yeah, I see it up now.
Okay, I think we're all set. As people come in, if you guys can just let me know if you can hear us all right, and everything's good there. I guess I'll just wait just a second, and then we can have you introduce yourself as people kind of start to come in.
Sure. What's up, chat? Good to see people rolling in so quickly. Always love that.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to have this guest tonight. We are literally just meeting for the first time. We met for the first time 15 minutes ago, but I watched some of your videos, and honestly, you just seem like a really good guy, which I appreciated. And you seem to really like and enjoy Pokemon. And I guess the story of how I found your channel is I just sort of watching YouTube, and the algorithm brought me there, and you had a video saying you were starting to get into Pokemon, and you were talking about what you really liked about it, what you saw in it, both from like an investment market standpoint, but I could tell that you were like really excited to like collect open packs and enjoy it. And one thing that I'm always looking for people who are sort of like newer into the hobby in that sense, but you also have like 20 years of card collecting, hobby type experience from sports. And so I guess without telling your story anymore, if you could just sort of introduce yourself a little bit to my audience, a little bit about your background, maybe in sports and collecting in general, and then where you're at with Pokemon, and then we'll get going.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Chat. My name is Dakota, as you can see down there below. My channel's Sports Cards Anonymous. As far as cards go, I've really been collecting sports and Pokemon cards for 20 years. Pokemon cards have been much more of fly by night type. It's just been here and there. It's just one-offs. But sports cards is what I've been the most heavily invested in. Since 1999, it's been consecutive. Like there was no break. I didn't take a break during college. I was just always buying. And whoa, I lost my camera there. I don't know what happened. Give me a second. I'll get that fixed. But
I can still hear you.
There we go. We're back on. I don't know what happened. So 20 years, right? Collecting sports cards, football cards. And I don't know, man. COVID hit and I found YouTube content. I didn't know sports card or Pokemon card YouTube content existed until COVID, even though I was in the hobby the whole time. And I watched it for about a year. And then finally I said, okay, I'm tired of these jokers on the internet. I'm going to start my own channel because these guys don't know. They only know success, right? They only know a booming market. And I felt like they were kind of steering people down the wrong path because they kind of just got in at the exact right time, which, hey, good for them. They made their money. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, to me, the most important thing is retaining the growth that we've seen over the last like 2 years. And I think just pumping markets and telling people buy is not a good way to retain people. So a lot of my content is focused on how to build a collection that is satisfying, a collection that you're happy with. But I also talk about like kind of my journey is like learning how to also build a collection that's valuable, that over time, that will appreciate, that you're going to be happy with. And then, hopefully that kind of helps you move into cards that you otherwise would not have planned of moving into. So then I don't know what happened beginning of December. I mean, it was just 2 months ago. I was just kind of like perusing some Pokemon content on YouTube, and I was like looking at prices and I was like, what is happening? This is insane. I know this, I know the prices in sports cards, like I know them. And then when I'm looking at Pokemon prices, I'm like, these prices, it's too low. This is crazy. And then, so I really started studying, watching some content on YouTube. And then I dropped in December, the month, I never do this. I never spend this kind of money. I just thought it was a good deal. I dropped about $5,000 in the month of December. $2,000 was on singles and $3,000 was on wax, and currently saving for some more wax right now. So that's the journey, I suppose.
I like how you call it wax. I noticed that in your videos.
That's what we call it in sports cards. It's just sealed case. I don't know.
Definitely from the sports card world. Yeah. No. It's just funny. Obviously for people, that comes obviously from 70s, 80s, all these Topps products where, used to be sealed with wax. It's great to have you on. What you said there resonates with me a lot. I've only ran this channel for about a year and a half. Started at the beginning of the pandemic also, and had the exact same experience of like a lot. Initially, there just like wasn't very much content, and then all of a sudden there's a ton of YouTube content and a lot of people who had sort of just gotten into the hobby, giving financial advice, giving sort of like investment advice, hyping things up. Very similar story, I think, of why I started my channel. And my goal and my belief is also from a financial perspective. When you create a place where people don't get burned, when you create a place and a hobby where people really collect things that they really enjoy and things that they get for really good value, where the value doesn't just like tank all of a sudden because people don't actually like that item that much, and mostly people are just buying it, to flip it or as a quick investment. That is actually what creates established, sustained hobbies. And the reasons certain hobbies have really collapsed over the years, and pop culture collectibles and investing in pop culture collectibles is very dangerous because it's highly dependent on demand, and demand is highly dependent on fun. Okay. And enjoyment, particularly during the down periods and during the periods where people are no longer making money, or you're no longer getting the highs of like, I'm going to start a very successful business or make hundreds of thousands of dollars in this. It has to really come back to how people treat each other, the friends that you make, and your enjoyment of the actual cards, the actual things that you're buying. And so I think that channels like ours really do a service, and many, many channels like ours do a service for the various communities to create spaces and platforms where, that sort of enjoyment, the knowledge can really be shared for people, but also like the enjoyment and how do you minimize all of that risk and create something sustainable and long lasting. So,
when I talked about what was so inviting about Pokemon, I mentioned a lot about like just the prices, but really what hooked me was that, in my opinion, coming from the sports card world, Pokemon, the brand, they cared about the secondary market for their cards. And when I looked at the totality of cards offered over the course of Pokemon's, lifetime, and I know everyone's concerned. Well, I don't want to say everyone, but I see a lot of people concerned about Pokemon print runs and things like that. But when I look at what they've done, I'm like, they built something that is collectible, where in sports cards, I feel they've much more just printed to try to get money up front. And they didn't care as much about the secondary market. And it makes sense because, of course, it's a Pokemon brand is the whole. I mean, it all runs up to Pokemon. A strong secondary market's good for Pokemon. So, man, I don't know why that keeps happening, but
okay. But this channel's very laid back about that stuff, so no stress.
So, I just think, I think Pokemon's a great. They did a great job of I guess curating what they were putting out to build something that people wanted to collect.
Yeah. So specifically, I guess digging into that, can you talk a little bit more about, why you think Pokemon? You definitely you can share a little bit of your story, why you really like it, why you want to collect it. But this is a market channel where we talk a lot about the market. So why you looked at the Pokemon market and the modern market, the vintage market, and you saw a lot of value coming from sports cards. You mentioned a little bit there, but if you want to touch on things a little bit more deeply, Ed, we can sort of start there, and we'll definitely have time for lots of questions and all sorts of things with the chat too. But
yeah, absolutely. So this is not a gotcha question. This is just, I'm going to say a number and I'm just going to double check with you first. Do you know how many sets Charizard's in English?
Not offhand, but I would guess it's probably 25 to 30, somewhere in there.
So that's what I got. So I did a little bit of research. This is 2 months ago now. So my numbers may not be 100% there, but when I did a little bit of research, I saw that over the last 25 years, Pokemon had printed roughly 90 sets in English. And out of those 90, 25 to 34 had Charizard in them. Well, every year, essentially, they print 30 to 34 sets of each individual sport. So because people want to talk about, well, Charizard's been being printed for 25 years or something like that. Yeah, but right now, today, 25 years later, he's been printed or it has been printed in as many sets as any rookie printed this year, right? There's already more LaMelo Ball cards out there than there are Charizard cards. To me, I was like, oh, that's a huge win. Like that to me really speaks to like Pokemon slowly growing and not just printing the best available every single set. And that's something that really, that I guess, hit me because I'm like, all right, they care about what they're printing out. Because if they just wanted to do it for the money, they didn't care about the secondary market. They would just put Charizard and Pikachu in every set, call it a day, right? Blastoise, Venusaur, and all your legendaries. But they don't do that. They change it up. So that was a big one for me. As far as like, I could tell like, okay, Pokemon cares about it. And then also just the number of sets overall. When you look at, there's 90 total Pokemon, roughly 90. I mean, people might be able to say, there's these little sets here and there that I didn't account for, but roughly 90 sets in English. And maybe the exact number. I don't know if you do, sound off, but so like roughly 90. And then like between baseball, basketball, and football, that's how many is, more than that's made every year. And I'm just like, that's just, people complain about print runs in Pokemon, but I think it's a much more selective, like what is printed. So I think that it's in a much healthier space. And then more importantly, I think that they would continue that kind of thought process moving forward, where they pick and choose, where they put out great sets like Brilliant Stars coming up, supposed to be a banger. So stuff like that.
Yeah. I think, obviously with sports, there's a very interesting, trying to figure out how much is being printed, right? Which sets should I care about the rookie in, which variation of that rookie, all the different variations, the parallels, all those types of things within each set. And then each company that is producing all of that stuff. It's a lot, certainly a lot more cards, a lot more to choose from, and a lot more. Obviously there's so much more money in sports, which is like, it's insane how much more money is in the sports market than the Pokemon market. When you see all the cards that are selling for like over $100,000 in sports, they're probably 100,000 plus cards, I would imagine, easy, that are selling for over $100,000 in sports.
Oh yeah. And the other thing is too, because when you consolidate the set list and you consolidate how many sets, Pokemon is in, when we're going into the second print year run of LaMelo Ball, rookie for basketball last year, he's going to have, double the number of cards printed, probably more than double the individual cards made than Charizard already has, right? And sure. So to me, what Pokemon has done, again, by curating what they produce, you focus collectors to focus on cards. Like, because the way Panini's doing it now for basketball, because there's just infinite choices out there, you can go get whatever card you want. Well, that makes every card special and also no card special, right? What is unique to me about Pokemon in this, environment is that they haven't gone down this route of putting Charizard in every set. So the 30 that exist, that's one of 30 Charizards. That's kind of meaningful. If you want a Charizard in your collection, whether you're a beginning collector or a more advanced collector, there's a Charizard to kind of meet your budget. You just got to figure out where it's at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think what's interesting in Pokemon is what Pokemon are the most popular now, and what are going to be in the future. Is that always going to be the same? Is there going to be some shift with the generations? And obviously, Pokemon versus sports, it's a different, sports athletes become valuable for a variety of reasons. The first one to probably start with is the statistics, their actual like career, their ability. But then it's like all-star games, it's championships, it's personality. It's, do they do stuff after their career? Is it just a likable player, a likable person that people are actually fans with? There's so many factors that kind of go into, it's a real person, right? For Pokemon, it's about the connection that people have to the characters. And a lot of that has to do with certainly the anime, the video games, the importance of the characters, like the starters being the starters that you got, that were reflected in the anime, the starters that were reflected in the Game Boy games. But it does feel a little bit, when comparing to sports, a little bit more interesting in terms of like how subjective it could get, in terms of what Pokemon become the most popular, are the most beloved for each generation, outside of things like obviously Pikachu, Charizard to some extent, because of how much it's already expensive, but also been sort of pushed out. I do think it's interesting with like the Gen 1 Pokemon being, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, being in a lot of cases the most expensive. Does that have to do with most of the spending power being in the 30-year-olds? Or do the 20-year-olds like the second generation, third generation more? Are the kids today can actually like the newer stuff? And you can obviously make that similar comparison with sort of like rookies, versus collecting sort of the older, but one big difference, right? And I'm a little all over the place here. This is just how I am, but actually respond to that, and then I will go make.
Well, I think the sports card market is not as logical as you might think it is. Okay. So to me, really, both are really hype driven markets, and the hype is just kind of different. The player, just in the moment, they can be the most popular. Some may be the most popular at the given time, like in a broader time horizon, and some may be all-time populars. Where Pokemon, to me, it seems much more stable. When you talk about a Charizard, when you talk about a Pikachu, a Mew, and a handful of others, Gyarados, Lugia, a few others, those to me are just staples. And it's just like, I mean, it's gonna take a shift from Pokemon to decide they don't want them to be profitable anymore, or the main characters. But at the same time, like, Pokemon's gonna, they are their main characters right now, so you don't want to shift away from them either. Like, they want to continue to pump them and make money with them. And the Detective Pikachu, still based on kind of some of the most popular characters that were popular 20 years ago. And so to me, like, there's just a lot more. It's a lot more steady. What is hot? What is popular? Right? What retains value in Pokemon is much steadier than in sports cards, and that is something else to me. That's why, like, when I look at singles and like whatever, just picking up random Charizards for $5 here and there, it's just like, I mean, I don't expect this to be a $200 card, but I mean, I could see it being a $25 card just because I feel like over time, Charizard will continue to do well.
It would be interesting. So I 100% agree with you when it comes to modern players, right? Like, anyone who wants to look at any of this rationally says LaMelo Ball has done nothing at all, and yet some of his cards are going for insane amounts.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of that has to do with the one of one, the serialized movement in sports, which obviously has been going on for a long time, but has been absolutely optimized. And now you have these booster boxes selling $4,000, $5,000 straight from these companies, and probably more than that, because they know they've intentionally created right out of pack this extremely valuable thing that the secondary market is going to view extremely valuable, even though the player has done nothing, historically yet. When we look at the older stuff, some of the non-serialized stuff, some of the vintage players, some of the Hall of Fame players, that's where I wonder if it's like how those guys will be perceived over time. Do young people care about them? Are they going to forget about? These are the things that obviously I'm sure sports card, collectors and investors go back and forth. There isn't necessarily a right answer, but I think the interesting thing with Pokemon to think about it is, like, the first gen Pokemon right now are the 30-year-olds have the most money, drove the market, started the market. What about the younger people? It was interesting. They did a survey in Japan recently, and like all of the most expensive cards in the Western market are not the favorite Pokemon in Japan from this specific list. Now, that doesn't mean that's oftentimes people like to like not put the thing that's the most valuable, and people are kind of like, there's the price inertia. It's not just, but in certain things that keep things high, but I think it's an interesting thing to just sort of watch over time. But I do agree, this is not stuff that just changes on a dime. And the thing that sports guys say, right? The Charizard can't break his ankle in a game. His career can't end, right? Those types of things, I agree that and people's opinions to shift, like, to liking Greninja or something as much as Charizard from a later generation, it would take a long time for that to happen. It's not something that could suddenly happen overnight.
Yeah. And, Pokemon would have to make that determination, right? They would have to, like you said, push it in the movies, push it in the content, push it in the games, and do they want to do that? It seems kind of maybe not in their best interest. Of course, they can kind of change it. I know there's a lot of talk about EV and things like this. But as far as the parts about your, the vintage players and things like that, it's a little bit different. Like, so I've got behind me, you're not gonna be able to see it, but I've got about 4 cards up there from like the 50s. And it's like, okay, well, about 600 of those are known to exist, like in general, or maybe 1,200. I don't know, whatever. It's just when you look at the print runs, they're so small. And to me, when you're talking about the 50s, I feel like as someone who enjoys the hobby, I kind of like the history part of the hobby too. And I'm heavily almost entirely a football guy from a collecting perspective. And so like I like picking those up because I see them as little pieces of history in the football, hobby. But I do think as we move away from that time period, like I guess those would be popular because again, there's so few of them that exist. But if you look at the best players of the 90s, Brett Favre, Elway, Emmett, Marino, all these guys, like are people really going to seek after their cards in 30 years in a way that makes them valuable, even though, because those were printed to the moon, right? The junk wax era. I don't really know. I don't know that, that actually seems maybe not that great a proposition,
That's two things against them. One, people not caring about the players much over time. And two, maybe even more importantly and more objectively, the supply side. One thing we talk about on this channel, right, is demand is very, very hard to predict. And if you study markets over a long period of time, you can see, and you've been in the sports market for a long time, you can see how quickly and dramatically demand can shift. But the supply, the rarity is objective, and is what can really help sustain value in down markets. But it will be interesting to see with those areas, because those areas also have the opportunity to grow the most during big booms because they can ladder up because there's so many available. So it's interesting.
And I want to get to a question. Well, just because I meant to mention this, and it's a question there in chat from Alec. Do sports card prices have potential future performance built into their prices? Because you mentioned that about like LaMelo Ball's prices being so high. So I did a video on this a while ago, and I looked at I compared what would be considered GOAT players versus like tier 2, number 2, number 3, number 4, kind of across the different sports. And when you look in sports cards, the difference between investing in the GOAT and not investing in the GOAT is humongous, right? Like if you have, Jordan PSA 10 Fleer rookies, those are worth 250 grand roughly. Guys, I haven't done a price check in a while, so it is what it is. If you have Hakeem, from that same set, arguably the second best card in that set, PSA 10 price, cards, those are 50 grand. All right, well, you're losing $200,000 because you didn't pick the right guy. And that's why there's so much of a premium put on these young players, because everyone's trying to prospect and pick the right guy. And I think that's a fool's errand, because who the hell knows? So for me,
when it's already fully priced in, like
there's no point.
Career is fully priced in.
So like what I like to do more is I like to watch players, and like you can tell they're going to be greats, and then just sometimes their market dips. People kind of sour on them for a little bit, and then that's the time to move in because they already are established as great players, and now their prices dip, and that's the time to move in.
Yeah, I think so. One thing that I think will be interesting in Pokemon, and I'd like to get your perspective on this is, do you think that it's a better buy right now? And I don't know if you know the prices offhand. And again, this is we're just opinions tonight. We're not holding anyone's feet to the fire one way or the other. But, if I'm looking at a set, let's throw out Hidden Fates. Are you familiar with Hidden Fates? Pretty good at this point.
Yeah, I have a couple sitting here. Yeah.
Should I buy the Charizards, or should I buy the Mewtwo's and the evolutions at their prices? Should I buy the baby shinies and the lower stuff and some of the Pokemon that aren't as popular in the less full art form? From a sports card investor collector, like, what is your instinct? Not saying that you can predict the future.
Yeah. Well, I know somewhere in one of these stacks, I got a few stacks in front of me just in case we brought stuff up, but I know I have the Charmander from that set, right? He's in that, or is it Shiny Fates? I forget, but whatever. So
you're right.
So, to me, when I looked at those prices, I was like, well, I mean, so many of these are so high, but there's so many of these that I think that are great Pokemon, like Charmander, that their prices, at $15, I think it was. I was like, that just feels like a good deal to me. Like, it's cheap. And again, there's also, if you're talking about this stuff and the ability to sell it, so much of selling, happens through eBay and I guess TCG Player and other places, but they take fees and it's easier for a card to go from $15 to $50 than it is for a card to go 100 to 500 or whatever, 350, whatever that ends up being, because people can, have a couple beers and bend for $45, but they're not going to bend for $350, right? They're going to think a little bit more harder on that. So I like some of the more value plays there. Yeah.
There are other reasons too. One of the big ones being that a lot of the modern market and a lot of these markets in general are driven by these, the cheapest possible slabs. And so, I think we understand, I think PSA will very likely come back down to $10, $15 a card at some point, these types of things. So even though there's a ton of supply out there, when you're buying a $15 slab, you're buying it at the cost of grading. when that card goes to, that card needs to go to 30 or 25 generally in a PSA 9 and 50 in a PSA 10 for more people to start grading them. So although there's a fairly endless supply of those for a while, there is not an endless supply at $15. And I hope that that's just understanding the incentives of grading. And so as soon as it goes up to 50, then it will come back down to 15 to 20, then it'll come back down, but there are windows in there. And so what you want to do is you want to buy at the low part of that. But Dakota's also exactly right on the other big part of that, which is the price point and how much more money and more people who need that much money and who really, really want the card to spend $100 to $300 versus like an impulse $50 buy. Absolutely.
And it's a little bit more important in sports than in Pokemon, I think. But also when you deal in, if you have a budget, and if you're dealing in $20 cards instead of $100 cards, you can build yourself a little bit more of a mutual fund, I suppose, with that, because I got the Charmander and I got the Pikachu and I got the Scyther and I got the Pinsir. And then so if one of those Pokemon become more or less popular over time, their prices would change accordingly, you would suspect. But again, that may happen less in Pokemon, but in sports cards, obviously with prospecting, I bought 5 guys instead of 1 and one of them hit it big. And so I made money, right?
Yeah. I think this debate about do I pick the Charizard or do I pick the other ones will be interesting over time. And I really don't know the answer to it. For me, oftentimes I think the Charizard's overvalued instinctually, but I think from more of a sports world where you see how worthless, you could take basketball tends to be is a sport that I play and the main sport that I watch and collect.
Sure.
But, if you take, like a 1970s set, and you take like the Hall of Famers, Hall of Fame rookie card going for $10,000 and then the same grade going for $25. That is a much bigger margin than Charizard in this hobby. So when you think about it from that perspective, it's like it could be way, way more. So people obviously don't dislike these other Pokemon that much, but it's this interesting thing of, how much better, how much more valuable, how much more do people care about Charizard and some of those key Pokemon over time? And I really don't have an answer to it. That's why I asked you, because I just think it's interesting to get your instinct on it as someone new and who come from the sports card world.
And I also think, because another appeal to me about Pokemon is that it, in my opinion, is meant to be ripped. And I like that. In sports cards, it's probably strictly incorrect to rip. Like, you need to leave that sucker sealed and don't touch it because you're just going to lose money. But with Pokemon, you have so many different cards that can at least get you your cost back. And that makes it fun, right? It makes it a fun experience. And honestly, that should be the expected value of a box should be the MSRP, the price paid for it. And with sports cards, I don't see. I guess you have the $1 million hits and then everything else is trash, right? And I hate that. But Pokemon is the only thing really that I'll rip. And because I'm like, you rip $20 worth, you got $20 worth of cards, like you win. Like that's all I was looking to do anyway. So
I can tell you came in the right time for buying the cheap sealed, because I've even been buying a bunch of sealed and I normally don't buy that much. And I certainly wasn't buying it. A lot of sets like Vivid Voltage were at $200, probably not too long before you came into the hobby.
Yeah, I definitely bought at the right time then, because I bought that at half that. So that was
exactly. So, but definitely, when we're looking at like that $80 to $100 price point, the expected value on a lot of these sets when you don't include grading is about $40 to $50 to $60, which you're losing $20 theoretically with the chance to make money. If you grade, you'll probably make it back over time anyway. And it's really fun. And so that's an easy, whereas you're opening a case of National Treasures and I don't even know what the average loss on something like that.
Forget about it, dude. They're all losses. A set recently came out. Yeah, a set came out like a week and a half ago, and the boxes were $800 a box. And I was really thinking about ripping one on the channel. And I do not rip sports cards wax. I don't do it, but I was just kind of feeling it, and I was like, let's try it. And I watched like 6 openings, and I was like, these people got murdered. There's no way I'm buying this. There's just no way. I'm not touching it.
It's very interesting what people feel is like healthy. And it tends to depend. I can tell. And when I say healthy, I mean healthy in terms of like, what should a modern booster box sell for? Like, what is the optimal price that shows like the hobby has like really good demand right now? And your distributors are making money, your LGSs are making money, and the people in the secondary market are actually able to like open and enjoy the product without stress. What is that correct amount? And it's really funny though to see a lot of like the stonker seal people like panic so much at these like $80, $90 boxes when people who have been here a long time are like, they're selling a ton on eBay right now. It's just Pokemon printed a lot. The demand's very high. If you like these, now's a great time to buy it, you know, and they should like these sets stonking to $200 is not like collectors. It's just not a sustainable situation, you know, right out the gate. And if these boxes in 5 years go to $200, $300, that will show Pokemon is doing phenomenally. Like that is an amazing trajectory for something like this. And it could be much worse. I mean, these could not move at all in 5 years. And that's what all these boxes did before this year, including evolutions, right? And all these other boxes that went up.
Yeah. Huge. I know that was at least a lot of content I listened to, they were saying that too. And like, I bought one case. I bought a case. I think it was Chilling Reign. I know people don't like the set, but the price, you know, I got it for less than $80 a box shipped. And I was like, I mean, I'll take my gamble. I mean, I don't know. That seems like, and again, I'm not trying to flip that next year for 200. I'm not ignorant of that. I'm just like, hey, you know, if over the course of 5 or 6 years, it goes up to like 160, 175, you know, okay, well, I mean, I'm kind of happy at that point. So
yeah. And I'm happy if in 2 years it's at 120. Like that to me, that to me would feel strong and would feel like, because the reality is these sets were printed a huge amount. Mm-hmm. And there are so many good popular sets. Like I like Chilling Reign. I like Battle Styles. I don't think any of these sets are that weak. Like I think that they're fun, enjoyable cards. I was in the Sun and Moon era where there were worse sets. Let me tell you. So, and there were sets that had like no cards you wanted. Yeah. So, and no card over $20. And the only card over $20 was like a gold energy. And some people loved the gold energies. I liked them, but that was not like the card I wanted to be chasing out of a set. But whatever. But so the fact that these sets have like 5 cards over $20 is huge. And that just shows the demand and the strength. It's just that Pokemon did what they said they were going to do, which is ramp up the printers and try to get it out there, because people at Target were freaking fighting each other to get Pokemon cards. And it's ridiculous. It's not fun. It's not good for the hobby, you know? And so I think things are in a really good space with that. And I think people should enjoy being able to buy it cheaply. And you know, do I think everyone should be Rudy and buy and put $250,000 in a Chilling Reign and try to stonk it? You know, it's crazy, but you know,
I'm working on a Pokemon bathroom. You know, I'm filling it with Pokemon cards right now. But I want to talk about like the retail, what you talked about, because that is something, well, some people gave me a lot of grief for. I talked about it earlier on the channel when I didn't really have a reputation or anything. And like what I said then was Panini and Topps, you know, sports manufacturers, they need to raise prices. It's ridiculous that people are sitting outside Target waiting to grab these boxes so they can go sell it on eBay that day for 3x the price. That doesn't make any sense. You either need to capture that value yourself and charge $60 or $50 or whatever, and make it worth it so they don't do it, or you need to print more, you know, material so it's not worth it for them, you know, that way. And so it's, you know, it sounds like in Pokemon, they decided to print more. And I'm for that, especially with Pokemon, because it's a game that's meant to be played. Pokemon is meant to be ripped. And that's why I like sealed Pokemon so much, because it's meant to be ripped. So, yeah.
I hear a lot of people speculate out there that Fanatic's taking over a lot of these things is going to be really good for sports cards, because they're going to do a better job of making it more collectible again, because you're going to have less sort of competing interests trying to compete with each other, and more like one entity or less entities competing, and then focusing more on the end product so that people actually enjoy collecting it. What is your take on the Fanatic situation? Because it's fascinating, I think.
Yeah. So my background is supply chain. And to me, Fanatics coming in, the best thing is the supply chain, because like you just mentioned, the LCS makes money, the distributor makes money, and then the manufacturer has to make money too, right? Well, when Fanatics comes in, they get to be the distributor and they get to go direct to consumer. So only Fanatics needs to make money. So I'm hoping that we see a reduction in price, but also, an improvement in quality of cards, because when we go direct to consumer, I'm hoping we can see some better cards out of them. The main thing I'll say with Fanatics and why I'm really excited about them, as someone who enjoys business and studies it a little bit, they are big thinkers. You know, people were sitting there and complaining that Topps and Panini were putting out bad products and that they weren't, evolving over time, and they weren't. Those were good criticisms. And then Fanatics buys these guys out essentially, in a way. And then people are like, oh my God, Fanatic's just coming in. They're going to ruin everything. I'm like, you jokers, we're just sitting here complaining about everything we got going on. What are you talking about? This is great news. These guys are coming in. They have a 10-year window minimum. And there's a lot of pressure on them to come in and do well. So they're not going to come in here and, make the hobby worse. They're going to make the hobby better, hopefully through growth and hopefully through making cards available for people who want them.
Yeah. Yeah. Going to be a lot of pressure on them, a lot of opinions, a lot of people wanting them to fail. These types of things. That's all good. Cool, man. Yeah. Let's see if I have anything else. We can. Do you want to take some questions and go to chat?
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
So feel free. The way I usually do it is like both of us can just take a look at chat. If there's anything that you want to answer or sounds interesting to you, if you want to pose a topic, or it's basically just like
I did want to ask you a question. Now, this might not be fair to you. I think I watched a video of yours 10 months ago. You were showing off a Pokemon collection, which was pretty awesome. I think that was 100% first edition saddle or PSA graded. And I think maybe you mentioned about like you prefer buying maybe the older Pokemon cards. You can correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, whatever. The question is, do you think that investing in singles in Pokemon, the more, I don't know what the eras are called, the more modern era, the last couple of years, do you think that could be profitable down the line? Or do you think people are better off, finding better deals in more of the base sets, the jungles, the Neo, and that era?
I think right now there are things to buy in modern, and I have been buying things in modern. And I think there are things that are profitable and that make sense to buy. I think before this period, there was nothing in modern that I would have bought. So that's only the last 3 months that I feel like there are things that at the prices, it makes any sort of sense. Now, vintage, I also was buying almost nothing during all of the high time. Also, there were a few kind of unique type trophy cards or low pop cards that I bought, that I picked up, that have not gone down in value, that have sustained most of their value. I think one of them has potentially gone down a little bit in value. There were two that sold, one slightly lower, one slightly higher, because they were very rare items. And I also felt like that they were just generally underappreciated by the market. But the thing about vintage in Pokemon, a lot of vintage stuff is massively, massively produced, and it's only 20 years old. So there is a little, it's not like, 1960s baseball. It's not the same thing. There's not the same attrition level. There's so much unlimited base printed, so some of these old sets, particularly when you're looking at base set or things that aren't first edition, there's a ton of it printed, and in some cases, probably more than some of these modern sets. There's probably more base set printed, unlimited base set, than some of these modern sets. I would venture a guess. Not to mention the fact that it was reprinted and the arts continue to be reprinted, these types of things. So when you look from that supply side, there's a lot of weaknesses. There's a lot that needs to be absorbed. But going back to your initial point, right, when we compare that to sports and all the different companies producing sports, if we compare it to like the 90s, the junk wax era, there was way more of that happening. And there were so many sports cards and even Michael Jordans that are worth nothing right now, from those eras, particularly from like the lesser collected, the lesser enjoyed, brands or what have you, however you guys talk about it. As far as like investing in modern, so I've been buying and have bought a lot of Hidden Fates at very low values. So Hidden Fates right now is the only set, Dakota, that is selling lower than what it was selling before the hype. So Hidden Fates right now, not the sealed, but some of the singles are selling for below than they were in early 2020. And that's the only set in Pokemon right now that's true for. There's nothing else that has followed that pattern. And it's because people are a little bored of it, a little tired of it, even though people love it. One, right now, there's the most opened, the most flooded that there will probably ever be of that set on the market. Two. And three, so much is coming back from CGC and PSA. And that was the set that everyone told everyone that was the most investable. Every channel at Hidden Fates is the number one best investment, last year. And so people stonked on it, hoarded a lot of it, opened a lot of it, and graded a lot of it. And because of all of that, the market is absolutely flooded. and people are more interested in like the modern sets and the alternative arts, and now they're bored by the shiny vault and these types of things. That is a perfect scenario for an investor, for someone who believes in Pokemon long term, to understand those dynamics and target something specifically like that.
All right. Right after this, I'm going to go buy some Hidden Fates.
So, but there are a lot of other sets that are newer, that are still probably going to be reprinted, and that don't really follow that pattern, and are still people's favorite thing to collect right now, which is great. But also, when it's something is sort of in the spotlight and the hottest thing, it's also going to have a higher price than when Pokemon prints the next cool set, the even cooler set with the even shinier card, even shinier, cooler Charizard. And that's going to, decrease the prices of the sets right before it. But there will be a period where it goes low enough that someone like me will start to buy it again. Someone who believes in sort of the long-term potential of Pokemon and just loves the stuff and doesn't mind just having a really great collection and a historical collection of all the periods of Pokemon, because I don't put money into this hobby that I can't afford to lose, or that I need to take out of it. So
yep, 100%. That's how you stick around when the tide goes out, right?
Yeah. So that's my general take on modern. So it is actually knowing the price history and understanding where we're at and where the attention is will give you an edge there. But if you bought anything right now, do I think it will be more valuable in 5 to 10 years? There's a chance, but there's definitely no guarantee. And there are a lot of people out there who are going to guarantee you. There's a chance, but I don't really know.
Yeah. And so then let me ask you this too, a follow up. So you got Brilliant Stars coming out late next month, a month from now, I suppose. And like, so a set like that, supposed to be a banger. Everyone's real excited about it. I guess like celebrations, but obviously this is a full set. So like, what are your thoughts going into, a set like that? Are you thinking, let me get some sealed product of this while I can around MSRP? Or do you think, well, let's just wait, a year, see what happens? What are your kind of, go to, your default, right? When this stuff comes up.
So Mason Cardinal Gaming, I'm not sure if you've seen his channel. He's always hanging out in here, and he always teases me for just being like, I don't buy anything unless I get it like well under market. I'm just like a huge bargain hunter. So my first answer is I will buy it if I see it for a really good price and value. I will not be buying it at $120, $140. If those booster boxes come down to like 80, 85, I would consider buying quite a bit. If they come to like 90, 95, I'll probably buy 1 or 2 to open. That's the honest answer.
Now, you keep saying booster boxes. Do you not buy ETBs or blisters or anything like that?
I do buy some. I'm someone who kind of sees value and likes everything. So I do collect one of everything for the most part as a collector. But as far as like getting the best value, it's all about what is the best value at the time. Generally, I think ETBs are overpriced these days. I really like them. There was a time when I thought that they were underpriced, but they've greatly outperformed certain ones because they're rare. And there are ETB sealed collectors out there who just want one of every one. None of the ETBs they're creating right now, outside of maybe some of the Pokemon Center ones, are going to have like any sort of rarity to them, in my opinion. Now, if they have a particularly good promo, the box looks particularly good and you're getting it at a really good price, $30 depending on the one, or $40 depending on the new set, or 25 ideally. I think that's what like Chilling Reign's going for, 20, 25. I think I got mine for $20 each one. So I picked some up at $20.
Yeah, I seen some Fusion Strike go for 30. I was like, that's enticing. I bought some Brilliant Stars pre-release for 35. I felt like that was a good enough deal. I know it's a hot set, so we'll see.
Yeah, and like when I started in this hobby, I opened up just $1,000 of product, and I probably made back like $150 or $200 off it. So there's also just like enjoying yourself, and I think for me, I plan on just being here for forever. I have no plans on ever leaving. So I'm in no rush. Like I'll get to enjoy and appreciate the sets. And for me, it's all about, I get a lot of enjoyment for searching for the deals and being patient and waiting. But everyone should definitely collect on their own, for $5, and it's going to be much more fun. Most people would be like, that's easily worth it. Why am I waiting 2 years to save $5?
I mean, like, well, it's funny you just mentioned that about Pokemon. Like, I don't know what it is about Pokemon, but I just love it. I guess because, I played the game like I was an addict. I probably was an addict. I was 8 in 99 when all this comes out. And I don't know. So I've got football, baseball, basketball cards, and I love football. Football is my thing. And my second joy is definitely Pokemon. Like there's no question. That's why I was so happy when I got back into it. I was like, I would much rather have Charizard than LaMelo Ball or Luka Doncic. Like I just like Charizard more. Like I just connect to that more. Hell, I still play the games. It's a good way. I'll kill an evening when you playing a game. So so just to your point of like thinking you're gonna stick around and stuff. Like I think everyone knows I'm not leaving football anytime soon, but I don't think I'm leaving Pokemon either. I'm just gonna be a little bit more selective of what I buy, like you said, trying to find deals on some of the sealed wax, but. Man, some of these singles, I can't pass some of these up when they get so cheap. I don't know. It's kind of crazy right now.
I mean, I think someone like you obviously have the instincts, like this sort of thing. It's just about engaging in as much content as possible and hearing like different voices. And then it's all about price history. Because when you know the price history really, really well, it's the same issue that people made the mistake in sports. Like if people had known that this card that was going for $1,000 was going for $30 or $50 ungraded all day, and you could easily get them and then grade them, and that people were making like the people hyping it up and telling you to buy were the ones making $1,000 and flipping it directly to you. Like if people knew that, they would not be buying. They would have never bought those. They would have never fallen for it, in my personal opinion. And some of the same stuff happened in Pokemon. And I think that that's why when we're really excited and it's like, I want to grab everything and I want to get everything. That's when you like, I'm not saying this to you, Dakota, but for anyone out there, it's like, you got to rein that in and be like, okay, let me really learn, there's a lot to learn. And I've entered a lot of new hobbies in the last year and I've made a few mistakes, but one of the things I really try to do is talk to the experts, reach out, connect to the people who've done it for a really, really long time. And people have been super generous, with their info with me. I got into Dragon Ball Z and Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic and all sorts of things. So, that's, and again, it goes back to what we said in the beginning of our video. I think about like people want people to have a good time because they want you to stay and enjoy it and have fun here, because we all want it to succeed and thrive and be a worthwhile hobby for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And one more thing too, I wanted to mention, because you had mentioned a couple of times now that, people in their 30s are the people with money and they're the ones who grew up on the original base set. And that's what's popular right now. So another reason why I like Pokemon long-term. So if you look at kind of, we'll say trading cards in general, right, over history, it's always, baseball owns 80 to 90% of that history. And probably the last 3 to 5 years, basketball has owned it as like the number one, like top selling. And I do think more and more that over the next 10 to 20 years, number 1 and 2 will be football and and Pokemon, football and Pokemon. And I mean, you don't have the international appeal with football that you do with basketball. But I think when you look at how the culture has changed over the last 20 years, I think over the last 20 years, football is unquestionably the most prevalent sport in the United States. Like from ratings, there's just no question. And then also, like you said, as the 30-year-olds and 20-year-olds become older, I think they're going to be more interested in Pokemon cards than baseball cards, and maybe than basketball or football, whatever it is they grew up on. So I think that, and that's another reason why the next 10 to 20 years I look at and I'm like, Pokemon and football to the moon, baby. Nowhere to go but up from here.
And the coolness factor and socially acceptable factor is one of the key things that have always held Pokemon back. And you can see how much everyone actually loves this because they had such a strong connection with it as a kid. And it's amazing that, like, I think, I quit it for 15 years. I never thought about Pokemon a single time for 15 years, 20 years of my life because I was too cool for it or something, or I just grabbed a bit, right, or I moved on, and it wasn't like I was like, I hate Pokemon now, I'm too cool for Pokemon now. It was more of a natural sort of like, I just like moved on to other things.
Yeah.
When I saw those cards as an adult and opened that pack as an adult, right back. I mean, right back to that kid. And that is really powerful. And when adults are collecting with their kids and multiple generations of this stuff around the cards and are sharing that same experience that we had as kids, like that does show. And the fact that it's global. Will it be the number 2 thing behind football or something like that? I don't know. I mean, that would be incredible. That would be incredible growth. I mean, I
would be surprised if Pokemon doesn't surpass the sports cards. Like you're talking about 10, 15 years from now. I think that
would be amazing.
I think that, like what you just said, basically, I mean, I think probably other people call it this, geek culture, nerd culture, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
I think 10 years ago it was frowned upon. I think obviously now it's accepted. And I think it's, if not, it's certainly headed towards mainstream. Like 15 years ago, people would have collections and they kind of hid them in their basements and no one saw them or whatever. But now, we put them on display and, everybody's interested in it. And I mean, social media makes it a huge deal too, because now you get, some confirmation and some affirmation in what you're doing. And I think that this, geek culture, nerd culture, again, whatever you want to call it, is just going to become more and more prevalent. And to me, Pokemon's got the biggest base. It's got the biggest foundation of people that potentially could be interested in cards.
Yeah, and I think the Pokemon Company has arguably done the best job, of any company involved in creating this sort of stuff. And Nintendo is just a freaking genius. And not to mention that collectability is literally built into the property of Pokemon, where you have to catch them all, which is an unbelievable genius idea that I can't believe no other company came up with before Pokemon. That they built that into the actual video games and into the world, into the story. So yeah, so it's the whole South Park, the Chin Pokemon. You remember those episodes? Do you ever see those episodes?
I didn't watch South Park. Wasn't my thing.
South Park basically made fun of how addicting Pokemon was, and
hey, they got that right. I tell you now, my Game Boy Color, my Pokemon Blue, and then Pokemon Silver, I played the heck out of that crap.
Yeah, but it will be super interesting to see. And honestly, it's refreshing and heartening to just see someone from the sports world who loves Pokemon just really loving it and enjoying it and thinking that it's going to do well. It's nice to see that. And I think that I really do think that there's a lot of people that feel that way. And it will be interesting to see how the supply gets eaten up over time. And the supply is not endless. There is a ton of it, and there still is a ton of it, and it may take a long time, but we are going to see if Pokemon does increase, and if Pokemon ever gets to where you think it will, number 2 behind football or something like that, and surpasses most sports with the amount of money that's in sports, the market will be 50 times, 25 times is the size it is right now or something like that, and so your high end stuff in this hobby, the stuff that's really rare, low pop, could absolutely unbelievably explode. I do caution everyone that demand is just very, very hard to predict from my perspective, and it's hard to know how many 30-year-olds who are obsessing and loving about it now are going to like it when they're 40, are going to like it when they're 50. What does that trajectory look like? Do people fall out of it? And we'll know more in 10 years, obviously. But I think it'll be easier to predict than to predict the next 20 years in 10 years. I think this is the first time in a lot of ways this Pokemon market's getting tested with there was a bubble of sorts in 2016 and then the market went down, but it's nothing like this. So.
Yeah, and we saw it in sports too. And just kind of one thing, maybe you had wanted me to go down this path a little bit earlier, but one thing you had talked about, people in sports say, Charizard can't tear his ACL or whatever. The most important thing that Charizard can't do is retire. That is the most important thing, is that he cannot retire, because what happens is a kid who's 8 years old in 99 grows up and he loves Charizard. A kid who's 8 years old in 2022 grows up and loves Charizard. So, 20 years later, when this 8-year-old is now 28, he's still looking for Charizard. So now you've got a span of 40, 50 years where everyone's looking for Charizard. Where in football, baseball, basketball, whatever, you said you like basketball. So, Larry Bird's big in the 80s and the 90s, and he's a big name right now. But people that are my age did not grow up on Larry Bird. So 20 years from now, Bird's cards are still going to carry some importance because they're significant and because people still remember people that liked Larry Bird, yada, yada, yada. But it's going to be LeBron James. It's going to be Dwayne Wade. It's going to be Luka. It's going to be these guys that people are growing up with now. And so just Charizard being essentially evergreen, right? Just continually a part of the product and a mainstream part of the product. That's really, to me, the most important part of why I think Pokemon is going to do well over time. But it also means it's important to pick your spots, right? Pick your popular Pokemon that you think are going to stay popular.
And I do think the downside of that sort of the Charizard as Michael Jordan is that Charizard is not so unbelievably featured across things, way more than other things. Charizard does not have the stats, does not have the championships, does not have some of the icon status, does not have the interviews, does not have the person behind it, does not have like these types of things. But I also think with that comes positives, because it also comes, Charizard can't come out and have a gaffe and say something offensive that then bothers a ton of people. There's all sorts
100%.
of with that too. I do think over time, the newer Pokemon are 100%. If Pokemon does well, the new Pokemon that other people that everyone's hating on right now will be beloved by the new people and by the kids. And I know it for a fact because I just even qualitatively, I talk to kids about it in my family and other places, and they love some of these new Pokemon. It's a very similar to the Star Wars effect where people who didn't grow up with the three prequels thought they were all terrible, but Jar Jar Binks was the best ever selling.
Jar Jar, yeah.
Right. And everyone hated Jar Jar, but Jar Jar Binks the number one selling thing, because kids are obsessed and loved him. And so you have to understand that the way kids interpret things versus the way adults interpret things change, and there aren't those statistics, but adult opinions and the fact that Pokemon is going to feature Charizard in sets because it helps sell sets and is the most featured thing. And the fact that kids are chasing the Charizard now because the Charizard is the most expensive. And so they're getting that experience of that. Definitely agree with all of that. I just think that the newer Pokemon are also going to come up, if that makes sense, and are undervalued as compared to some of the first gen Pokemon that aren't as popular. But
I could see. I got a little bit of feedback now. I'm not sure. About now. Yeah, it's good now. Unless okay. All right. So
Start found guilty of assaulting Ash.
Yeah, I definitely think I kind of made a list of my top, what I consider to be the top 20 Pokemon. And I could certainly see really only 4 sticking around, and I just try to stick to those, or, I certainly see where there's going to be a lot of room for new Pokemon to come in. But also, let's be honest, the design of the older Pokemon is just phenomenal. It's just some of these new Pokemon. What the hell are these guys doing? What are we doing here? This stuff is crazy. These ice cream cones, man.
Think about Jar Jar Binks, man. Same things. You can go on the message threads right now. Saying Jar Jar Binks is an offense to humanity. Yeah, it's just, I definitely agree with you on some of them in particular. Others, I don't think are that bad, and people have really negative opinions. And I'm just it's the exact same quality of some of the middle tier Pokemon that we love from first gen. Now, there's a difference between those Pokemon ever becoming the top 10 from the original base, Mew, Mewtwo. It's also the story behind Mew and Mewtwo.
Yeah.
And that is so unique and special. And then you also just it's the first ever generation. And so when you have 30 I don't know if they'll ever do 30 generations of Pokemon, but if they have 12, 15, 20 generations, the first gen is the first gen, which will also have weight. And then as you really see in sports, and something I talk about in Pokemon a lot, be interested to see if it happens, first appearances of Pokemon. I want to get your take on that.
Appearances in sets?
First appearances of a Pokemon in the hobby. Yeah, in a set card, in an English set card. Do you think that will create more collectability, more value, similar to sort of a first appearance in comic books or a rookie sports?
Are there instances where a Pokemon's in the game and they're not in the set right away?
They're not necessarily in the base set. Not every Pokemon will be in the base set of each new era.
Then yes, I would think 100% first appearance cards would be important. I would think so. Yeah. I would say that, you'd want to go back. You want to get the first, you're challenging me here. I'm going to say Scyther. I'll stick to my first edition. That's what I know. So, you want to get the first Scyther out there. You want to get the first Persian if that's what you like. So I just think those are
Scyther. Which set is Scyther?
Jungle?
Yeah. You got it. Just had to say it more confidently than even if you're wrong. Jungle, obviously.
Hey, you never know, man. I get the sets really confused. That's something I got to figure out in my brain a little bit more. But anyway.
Yeah, all that stuff takes time. When I came back in the hobby, I knew 5 sets. And 6 years later of just intense obsession, I can talk about a lot of crazy niche stuff.
Yeah, that's just how it goes.
Every set, so it comes with just passion.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, let's take some questions here. We do have a super chat here from Ricky. Thank you, sir. Came here for Dakota. Cheers, Jake. Currently collecting Topzone, Bandai, and Meiji Pokemon cards. Very cool. You know, Ricky?
Ricky, thanks so much for showing up. Appreciate it. Thanks for the support.
Let's see here. All right. Let's take some questions if you want to see the chat. I know we've ignored chat the whole night, as is fairly cool on my channel, but
as is the normal, huh?
Yeah.
What is going on?
Good conversations, and can't do both. Or I can't, at least. Okay, so we got some questions here. So, like, are all Charizards rare? Rob C. So definitely not. There's a wide variety of rarity. Just because something is a Charizard does not make it rare. That's actually that's a misconception that is fairly normal for new people in the hobby and people sort of repeating that. So you want to understand the pull rates. First of all, the first thing to understand is the pull rates. And so there's going to be, in sets, you're going to have secret rares. You're going to have some sort of next tier rare. You're going to have the holo rares. And then even in other sets, there's other rarity tiers in between the holos and the Vs, which are happening now. And then you're going to have just like the commons, uncommon, and then the rare card. And there's a big difference in terms of the amount of each cards that are going to be printed for each set. And then each set has a different amount that's printed. Now those numbers aren't public, although on my Patreon, we do a deep dive into that because we've done a lot of research on all of the numbers that Pokemon has given out over the years and came up with our estimations on what we think print runs are of certain things and of certain sets to try to get a better estimation of that info. But yeah, no, it's important. But that doesn't mean that if you have a holo Charizard and then you have a holo, I don't want to hate on any one Pokemon, but any other Pokemon, probably the holo Charizard is going to be more coveted and valuable than that other holo. But very likely, both are going to be worth absolutely nothing right now if they're from a modern set, or very, very little, because they're from that holo slot, which is a low rarity slot.
Yep. I would also, I don't know. I feel like, especially with like Charizard, when you're talking about like, yeah, get it. Some may not be valuable, but that doesn't mean you can't make money on all of them, if you're finding them at the right prices, sort of thing. So I'm sure there's some out there that are 25 cents, but other than that, so. Yeah.
I mean, even the regular holos right now, are probably going to be like $2, particularly the reverse holos. I'm thinking of some of the, like there's a one in Vivid Voltage. Yeah. But I'm not sure. I know graded it's going for $15 to $20, which means probably ungraded it's like $2-3 card somewhere in there, maybe $4 card.
Dang, graded a 10? Or
like 9s are going for around that. 9. Yeah. Let's see here. Yeah, just pick out questions that look good for you.
Yeah, there was one they asked if I know about the sports card market versus like the sports card ticket market. I mean, to me, the ticket market is just an extension. Charizard Perfection, you asked it. It's just an extension of the sports card market. It's just a way for people to collect like iconic moments, like maybe the Ice Bowl or Jordan's final championships, things like this. To me, that's really more the memorabilia market, which is still a collectibles market, and you see a lot of similarities. But again, I just think the sports card market just went so high. A lot of people just started going wide because prices got a little out of hand, and so you see some of this other stuff start to rise a little bit. Charizard's so overrated, man. I don't know. I mean, he's not Mewtwo. I'll give you that, but come on.
He is expensive. He holds a premium.
Who is your favorite Pokemon?
What always comes to mind is Alakazam, Dragonite, Mewtwo, and Gyarados. Those are probably my group, and depending on my mood, it would have to be one of those, though. It's definitely not one of those. That's a great list. In fact, they're probably all on my list. I have to add Blastoise though. I was a blue guy. Who's your hipster favorite? But not as much as the other ones. Like none of the starters did it for me as much as those other ones. And part because who's your hipster favorite?
The one no one else really likes. The one out there.
Uh, I mean, one of the jokes on the channel, a joke, but I love like every Pokemon or almost every Pokemon, and I'll show cards and everyone's like, that Pokemon's terrible. Everyone hates that one. As far as like Poliwrath is one that everyone hates.
Hey,
I love
that's a good one.
Yeah, Poliwrath is like a definite top 50 Pokemon for me, and people hate Poliwrath. Yeah, so
that's so funny.
Yeah, whereas I actually don't like Magneton that much. Like I'm not a huge. I like Magnemite, but not so much Magneton.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So my favorite, my like hipster favorite has always been Sandslash. I've just always loved Sandslash.
Sandslash is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Porygon. We got Porygon in chat. That's a good one. Who I want someone who likes Jinx. We need a Jinx lover in here. That's what we need.
I like Jinx a decent amount. I told Rafi, who used to run this channel, that I like Mr. Mime, and he laughed at me and was like, Mr. Mime's literally the worst Pokemon.
In Detective Pikachu, Mr. Mime's the best, man. He's a monster.
Yeah, he is quite a weirdo, but yeah, what can I say?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he's a weird one. He's one that if like they made that now, all the old people would be like, that's the worst, like the weirdest, worst, scary, terrible. Yeah. I showed my roommate Beware, my old roommate, and he was just like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. It's just like this creepy, weird bear that wants hugs and is called Beware.
It's literally Pedo Bear. I mean, come on. What about one set I wanted to ask you about in particular? This is very specific.
Yeah.
What about the Detective Pikachu set? You have any thoughts on that? You like it? Don't like it?
A lot was printed. A lot existed in the movie theaters. They did a massive amount. It was very, very cheap for a while. I did pick up some of it sealed because I think it's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough. It's tough. I think some of it will depend on, honestly, like kids and younger people and their connection to that stuff. Do they really like it? Do they really want it one day? Is there going to be any sort of relationship to that compared to some of the promos we had as a kid that were given out at movies? I don't know. It's the other issue. Yeah, exactly. The other issue is just the ugliness, or people really don't like the way that those look at all. Like they're, and a lot of them I don't like that much, but I'm a completionist collector. I definitely collected the whole binder immediately when it came out.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's fine, and because it's so cheap, it has reasonable upside, I would say. But it if those were going for like $20 a pack or something, and I've seen some things that I actually think are just about the same, should be about the same value, going for $20 a pack right now.
Yeah.
And that would be just like insanely overpriced. But for $1 or $2 or whatever it is, it's fun.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of my thought. I just felt like it's unique.
Yeah.
For what it was. And again, the movie, some people hate it. Some people like, it's kind of a weird thing. I have to be honest. I just rewatched it and I was like, this is a much better movie than I remember. So, but I just with you, just at the price point, that's the main, again, if these cards were going for $20, yeah, it's just no way I'd buy it. But at $1, like, man, I mean, what else am I going to do with $1? So.
Yeah, no, I think that I think it's something that will stand out and people will want to collect. The question is how many people, and then what does the supply look like compared to that, and then how long that takes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I mean, I think there are better things you can buy for $1 probably right now, but if all those dried up and that was still $1, I'd probably be buying that too. Like I buy everything if if it makes sense. So, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if a big YouTuber makes a video on that and then all of a sudden they're like $5 a card. I mean, I saw that all this year. So
let Logan Paul throw up a Detective Pikachu Charizard, then boom, it's out, it's gone.
One thing that's interesting is the size of Pokemon channels compared to the size of sports card channels. What is your interpretation of that? What's your interpretation of like the YouTube sports sphere as compared to the Pokemon YouTube social media sports sphere? What's your feeling about that stuff? I think it's kind of interesting.
I actually meant to bring this up earlier. I'm glad you circled back to it. I really do. I hate sports card content. It is the most boring shit on YouTube. I hate it. And so I don't do normal sports card content. My content is much different than most people's. And I'm still evolving. I still am not happy with what I'm doing. I'm still trying to figure it out. I do 2 podcasts, essentially podcast. They're like this, but they're pre-recorded. I do 2 of those a week. I do a live every Friday that goes pretty long. And now I'm doing like a couple different collection videos. I'm building a collection with the community that comes out, so stuff like that, right? Just whatever. I'm trying off the wall stuff. I hate sports card content. It's charts. It's what's going up, what's gone down, who cares? Like if it's an analytical deep dive about why and some, thoughts about what could happen from here, I find that much more insightful. And this is what I meant to say earlier. I have found Pokemon content much more enjoyable, and it's helped me enjoy getting back into Pokemon even more. I think I like the closed circuit. We talk about, again, 90 sets. If you're saying, hey, you want to build a collection and, there's only like 30 or 50 or whatever Charizards, like here's the cheap ones, right? And so out of these, which one's best and why? And you can give reasoning and you can talk about, production and things like this. I just think it's so much more interesting. And honestly, TCG player to me is a huge, huge thing. TCG player for me makes Pokemon much better. And there's a lot of content that like features that. I just think there's a lot of information there that is just easily available that makes like it makes the level of content up just because it's just so much, that is there and, readily available. But, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are a number of channels, Dan, Nick, Old School Pokemon. Like there are a lot of channels out there that do a lot of, like, these are sellers who've really been selling and engaged in this hobby for 5-6 years, some of them 10-15 years. And they really sit down and tell you exactly like why they do what they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What their thought process is, all that sort of stuff. It's not holding a chart saying these 3 things went up and these 3 things went down. And it's like, I'm not necessarily anti that for me personally, but I definitely would be like, that's not any use to me. Like, I don't, but for someone like me, for example, I am not the average Pokemon collector. I think that I'm, and the people watching this channel are not the average Pokemon collectors. We're pretty hardcore here. So I could see how people who are more just like, I just want to hear that my set went up. You know what I mean? Like they don't have the same, I want to hear a long analytical discussion. I just want to like crack some packs and like hear that my set went up. And we have those channels in Pokemon too. There's plenty of stuff too. And I get it. It's sort of a different channels for different people, but it can be frustrating if you looked at a landscape, and it's part of why I started my channel, right? And you look out and you're like, there isn't the type of content here that I want to watch or enough of it. I'm going to do it myself. Like that. I can definitely relate to.
I mean, that's exactly what happened. Like I said, I started this, I said, like, I didn't know YouTube content for sports cards existed until COVID hit. That's when I found, I mean, I had been collecting the whole time, but I didn't know. And then I found it. I'm like, okay, this is cool, up and down. I didn't know this stuff existed. I was still like just looking at eBay crap. I'm like, okay. And then like, almost a year later, I'm like, guys, this is bad content. You're just doing it because sheep are watching it, but like this content sucks. And so for me, it's still an evolution because I haven't found someone to model after really. Honestly, I'm modeling my stuff more after the Pokemon community because I think the content's much better. All right. Well, here's a good one. I don't know. I think it's a good one. Is a novice here. Would you guys say Rayquaza is a top 10 Pokemon?
It's definitely a top 10 Pokemon in value. If we talk about like where the market sits, if you ask us personally, we could answer that too, but it's 100% a top 10 Pokemon in terms of value.
All right.
Yeah. Right now.
What's
your, do you have like an opinion on it in terms of like your own personal opinion? Oftentimes that's the type of Pokemon that like someone like you may not be as into if you didn't grow up with it as a kid and didn't have that like relationship.
Oh, yeah? Let's see if I can find my Rayquaza here. I have a few Rayquazas. I'm a fan of Rayquaza. I just think it's a cool Pokemon. Rayquaza is a cool Pokemon. And there you go. I think what I like about Rayquaza is I guess they put the Pokemon in a lot of different cool sets. Like that was an amazing rare. We don't have a lot of those. And I think that's kind of cool, right? So I think it's interesting that I don't know. I keep saying I don't know what these Pokemon are. They experiment with him in a lot of different sets, it feels like, and he gets a lot of different cool cards. And so many of those are just, cheap. And I mean, a big reason why I moved in on Rayquaza, because there's so many, like, I don't know, the GX, I don't know all the different things yet, but you get them for like $5. I'm like, that seems like a bargain. And then some of this other stuff I think is pretty cool too. So I like Rayquaza.
Yeah. I think there aren't too many people who are like, I hate Rayquaza. I think Rayquaza is pretty well liked. Rayquaza, people value Rayquaza more than I do, for sure. Like the market values Rayquaza more than I do. Rayquaza, I would say, really is up there with like Charizard, Lugia probably, and Rayquaza in terms of the prices that they generally get across the sets. Now there are some oddballs that get really high prices because they're very low, like PSA 10 pop reports, similar to something like sports, but
Sure.
pop reports kind of all equal. Those generally are the ones. And then you kind of have like Mewtwo, Blastoise in there. And then I didn't mention Pikachu. Pikachu has not had a lot of chase cards and a lot of really rare, it had Vivid Voltage, it had the Rainbow Rare, which we saw, okay, people really do like Pikachu. And if you give it a Rainbow Rare, it's way more valuable, certainly right out of the gate than the Lugia was, the Rainbow Rare Lugia, for example. But if you looked at the Gold Star, for example, that Gold Star has come up a lot, the Pikachu Gold Star, but actually the Pikachu Gold Star has outperformed some other things because the Pikachu Gold Star was one of the highest pop. That and the Mewtwo were some of the higher pop Gold Stars, whatever, but they were never as coveted. And so they didn't see some of the explosion in value that, for example, like the Rayquaza, which is like the King Gold Star, did in part because that had a very low pop. That Rayquaza, for example, selling for considerably more than the Charizard in PSA 10. Yeah. So these kind of, in my opinion, somewhat strange examples, but it's interesting how, opinions are formed on Pokemon, on cards, and when, trying to figure out what is the overall market opinion on these things, and then where will it change in the future. But
it's pretty interesting. Chat's killing it, by the way. Is it pronounced Rayquaza or Rayquaza? Pokemon Classic, it's Leviosa.
I always say Rayquaza. But I've heard people say it differently. I've also heard there's a number of Pokemon that I pronounce that I've heard people pronounce differently, and I don't really. It doesn't matter to me, to be honest. I just like the arts, and I'm fine if I'm saying it slightly wrong. I apologize to people's.
They say it's like I say Rayquaza, but I get other people say Rayquaza, right? That's what other people say. Yeah. That feels weird.
I started saying Rayquaza for a little bit because I saw some of the big PokeTubers saying Rayquaza, and then I just went back to I'm just gonna say things the way.
Can I answer this question from Royalty Gaming Pokemon? This is a great
answer. Anything, yeah.
This is what I wanted to talk about. Thank you, Royalty, for asking that. So the question is, for somebody who's in sports market, do you have a preference in grading company choices for Pokemon versus sports? So one thing I really enjoyed when I came into Pokemon was that when people sell their cards, they give it a grade, raw. I really like that. I'm like, that's awesome, because in sports cards, you're just asking for a return when you do that, right? It's just you can't do it because people they get up in arms and they return it when there's any imperfection. So I like that in general, right? We start with near bent, then we go to light play and moderate and so on. And when I move, I don't know why this is happening. It's frustrating. When I come back in, I'm looking at auctions and stuff like this, and I'm like, this grader is so undervalued. It's crazy. And look, I think once I kind of learned that here, and I'll say which one here. Y'all probably already know. But once I start looking at it here, then I start looking at sports cards too, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this grader is amazing. Grader has a good reputation, even though it's a little bit newer, and y'all probably figured it out now. But at CGC, like I just love them. I think they're great graders, and maybe long term they're not going to do that well, but when I can pick up some of these cards that I'm picking up at essentially the price of near mint graded already, I'm like, well, people tend to believe CGC prices, whether or not the case gets the premium or not. They do believe the prices. So to me, if you can get near mint at the same cost as raw, like, all right, let's do it. That seems good to me. So I'm a big CGC fan, though I still buy, I've showed a few now. I have, I buy PSA 2, whatever is available. So.
I agree with everything you said. I think you're pretty spot on CGC. I do think that, I've been buying a lot of CGC, although I will say for some things now I'm seeing them sell similarly to PSA. Definitely as an investor financial, I would definitely be buying PSA over CGC at the same grade, at the same price at this point.
Oh yeah, same price.
Will that always be the case? I don't know. They might end up being very comparable. The one scenario where a PSA could ever be less is if it really gets out there that like CGC is just a tougher grader and a CGC 9 is better than a PSA 9 someday. With PSA also potentially grading harder, whatever you believe, one way or the other, all the different opinions out there. I tend to think that there's not enough difference in my experience. I own 20,000 plus slabs. I've looked at, so many of these cards. I don't think there's enough of a difference in my personal opinion that the market is really going to care, like really turn on PSA and suddenly like be like CGC is much harder and the CGC 9s are better than the PSA 9s. I do think CGC has a very, very good chance of outperforming Beckett in Pokemon. And yeah. And I think part of that is actually the case. It's a lot more similar to the PSA case. It's lighter. It's more appealing, I think, to a lot of people who are more used to PSA. It's a cleaner look. And I think people who like subgrades, which I do think a lot of people do like, some people don't, CGC gives a sort of, I think, will be a better option than Beckett overall. But that's just my 2 cents on it at this point. But yeah, PSA definitely king at the moment and probably will be for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, just for chat's benefit there. So I agree with everything you said. I think it's spot on. And my opinion of CGC is the same with my opinion of CSG, which is their sports card equivalent. And I think I've said the exact same thing you've said. The case build is a huge thing. The one thing for me, I think it'll be interesting to see how this goes forward. Well, you talked about, like same grade, same price, go PSA, which I agree with. Like that seems like the obvious, like house money. We did see, maybe not in Pokemon cards, but in sports cards, BGS was the leading grader for a long time. And about 5 years ago, that flipped over to PSA. So you have to be worried about a flip from PSA to CGC being the primary. What's going to drive that? In my opinion, when we talk about Beckett and how you didn't like, well, your criticism of Beckett's are fair. My main criticism of Beckett at this point is that they're doing a horrible job of talking to people. But to me, I've always said premium cards deserve to be put in premium slabs, and Beckett to me is the premium slab. Now I could see where maybe it looks a little bit weird in a Pokemon card, yada, yada, yada. But where I think the market could go, especially as we continue to see significant print runs and improved quality, people, I think, will like premium cards. Getting a pristine 10, getting a flawless 10, these things, I think could help drive value for some of these cards. Now you're talking about small numbers. I know, small numbers. So it may not happen, but I'm saying if CGC flips PSA, it's either because PSA really blunders or the market starts to really take to 10s, being something better than Gym Mint.
Yeah, I mean, I picked up a number of CGC 10s early on because the data that I was getting from people was that it was about at a 6% rate for Modern that they were giving 10s, similar to a Black Label, and yet they were going for much cheaper than a Black Label because a Black Label had the gravitas or whatever.
Appeal. I don't know. The sex appeal. I don't know.
So I took advantage of that in that window. Now I don't see that. I think they're going for quite a bit more. And as a grader, you're not going to get those. And if you do, it's just luck because all the cards look the exact same. And all these Modern cards I'm sending in are the exact same for the most part. They're all pack fresh. A lot of them are perfect and almost all of them get 9.5, slightly half off of a perfect. And if they just given me half more on that centering, and I really can't tell the difference, whatever. So as a grader, as someone, you can't really expect the premium. Like if you're going to send a ton of cards out, the amount you're going to get back, because all your 9.5s are going to sell so much lower than the PSA 10. Even if you hit the 6 to 10% CGC 10, you're losing quite a bit of money mathematically than if you just sent them all to PSA and got mostly 10s. You'd make a lot more. So the money just isn't there for people. Now, as a buyer, whether you're going to go after the CGC 9.5 and take advantage of that, I think makes a lot of sense. And as a buyer, going after the CGC 10s too can make sense in certain areas because we're seeing now how rare they seem to be. We'll know a lot more, obviously, when CGC releases pop reports and we get a better sense of what's going on. But that's what I'm hearing from people who grade tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, these types of things.
Yep. No, I agree. All right. Chat bringing great questions.
Yeah, go for it. I'm like in the middle top, but if you see anything at the bottom, go for it.
Well, Abba said, I wish they made a grading company that had thin slab, which is kind of interesting. I've kind of heard that thought before too. Like, can they reduce the slab size? But I don't know if that's going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, I think as you can see here, it's like Dakota has sees the Beckett slab as like a premium because it's tougher. It's maybe a little bit bigger, bulkier, and has like there's something about it that he experiences that way. I don't dislike those slabs, but I don't experience them necessarily as premium. So it's subjective. Yeah.
It could be because in sports cards, they also have an auto grade. And in sports cards, the Beckett auto grade is like the grail for auto grade still. And so that has a huge thing. And that might be why my perception of Beckett is like it's for premium label. It is a nicer, like when you talk about the construction of the case, it is better, but I think that probably has a lot to do with it, like my perception.
Yeah. And a lot of it is comfort and what people are used to. It's just the reality of this stuff, Yep.
How, do you just store everything in a box? How are your cards stored? What's the storage look like over there?
How do I store stuff?
Yeah, how do you store stuff?
I have different levels of storage. I got my 5,000 count, boxes. I got my, lots of other white boxes filled with top loaders of stuff. Got my binders, and then I have a massive amount of the white, what is it called? BCW. I always get the name wrong.
Yeah, that's right. BCW. Is that right? Yeah.
BCW. I always get the brand wrong. I haven't bought them in a long time because I bought just like a massive amount of them like a year ago, and I've still been able to last the boxes you build yourself. So I have those for a lot of slabs, and then I have sort of my black cases, which I've shown on this channel, my wooden boxes for some of the nicer ones. Then I have some of my the wheelies padded stuff that I can, take to a con or something or travel with, and safety deposit boxes. And then for sealed in plastic storage containers and acrylic boxes for display. So pretty standard. How about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, you can see behind me, I like to use boxes, and I try to make them as easy to display as possible, like easy to go through. I've been thinking about getting like a metal thing back there. Like what am I talking about? Like a shelving thing, just to put everything over there, just to make it easier for me. But then with Pokemon, because I'm buying sealed, that takes up a considerable amount of space. So
it does, yeah, particularly on that modern,
Yeah, that's true too. Because like all the V boxes and then the ETBs, they really take up a lot of space. I mean, the ETBs stack well. I guess so do the V boxes, but I mean, they have a huge surface area. So
yeah, historically that's been an issue on the Magic side, and some of the Magic products that haven't done well have been kind of more a lot of cardboard, a lot of space that it takes up, and a lot of people who are really high-endy and storing a lot of it. Space is like really, really crucial, so they prefer the booster boxes for the amount of packs. In Pokemon, it seems we have a lot more sealed collectors. We have a lot more collectors in general than Magic.
Magic doesn't have many collectors.
A lot of the value of the booster boxes in Magic is from actually cracking them and drafting with your friends and that sort of thing. Outside of like the really, really very, very expensive stuff. Although there might be some people crazy enough to do it, but yeah, I use, the other thing, I do have a display thing. I'm moving soon, so I'm actually gonna have a little bit more of a background at my new place probably. And I do have a one of those like just wooden frame display case things that I'll throw up on the wall. People can see in some of my older videos, and I like to cycle out kind of PSA cards, different sets, different things that I like looking at. It's kind of a way to really engage and appreciate the different sets and the different PSA cards, because a lot of the times PSA cards can just sit in boxes for too long for my liking. So
yeah, same. I started displaying stuff on my desk right in front of me, and then behind me you can see, and I have found that I've enjoyed that, because I actually, just like last week, I put some new ones out in front of me. I'm like, yeah, this is I should have been doing this my whole life. This is great.
Yeah, I'm always cycling. Like every week I cycle everything out in my old place.
That's great.
Got some great people from the Pokemon community in the chat here.
Yeah, chat's been great, man. Chat just takes care of themselves. They said we don't need YouTube goobers. We're just here to chat.
They're used to it. They're used to it.
A lot of hate for PSA, a lot of love for CGC. I think CGC is going to get a lot of love. I don't know. Like, I think to your point, like it's just going to keep like growing. I don't think it surpasses PSA necessarily, but I do think it gets to the point where it gets pretty even. And then, I mean, the prices, the grade are cheaper. So, I mean, do we start seeing a lot more stuff go there over Brilliant Stars? I don't know.
For sure, in the short run, you're absolutely going to continue to see that probably. Although the tens, people just get hammered on the amount of money they can make, but I think PSA is going to be the same price as CGC eventually, and I think PSA will be lower than CGC with subgrades eventually. And I think CGC, if you don't get the subgrades on CGC, how much is that going to affect the value of the card? I don't know, but it certainly will to some extent. So I do think eventually PSA will actually be probably the cheaper option again when including the subgrades. We'll see, just like they always were with Beckett.
I actually think subgrades are not going to be a big deal for CGC, believe it or not. I did it first, just like they were with Beckett. But more as I get more CGC and CSG in my hands, I'm like, I don't want the subgrades. Get them off. Like I don't care.
Yeah. I think I like them better, but I can't say that I've had them long enough to really know. I think it's the type of thing where it's like my opinion could shift over time. I think right now I pay a little bit of a premium, but very, very little, I pay like $1 extra, $2 extra. So not the cost of the actual thing, but I do pay like a tiny bit. I do seek them slightly. So,
and
very marginally though.
Yeah, I for me, actually the CGC case is better. I'm not saying it's better without the subgrades, but it's better than CSG is without subgrades, right? Like on the CGC case without subgrades, I don't even really notice it. CSG, they have a lot of white space. It's a little weird.
It looks a little wonky.
Yeah, I don't know how low PSA is going to go on price and when they get there. I know everyone's talking about them like just keep dropping price because they're just going to grade everything. But I'm like, why would you? I mean, at $30 a card, I think most people in the sports card community are just going to send to them. So why drop to 25? Why drop to 20? I mean, if people are going to send to 30, there's no reason to send to drop to 20. It's
going to depend on where these other markets like Pokemon, like obviously if Pokemon continues to grow, Yu-Gi-Oh, Dragon Ball Super, and then all, MetaZoo and a Flesh and Blood and some of these other, right, these games that may continue to grow and many others that might come in the space. If the card values are really super low, you're not going to have anyone grading the modern, and that can be a humongous financial loss as well. Beyond even the short-term financial loss, it could turn people off from those grading companies and push them towards other grading companies. And so the competitive advantage for PSA to keep it really low, to basically destroy the other businesses or continue to remain the top dog of Pokemon. I can tell you, if I was at PSA, I would be like, that's our number one goal. Our number one goal is to get everything. It's not short-term to make as much money as possible. It's to get every card that we possibly can in a PSA slab.
But then why not just say, hey, we grade cards at $30 a pop. And if you've got the new MetaZoo product, we grade it at $10.
Why don't they do that now?
I mean, like just say in the future state, once it's all cleared up and everything, why not say
they
that?
Then they absolutely might like do that with like sport. Like if sports people can afford it at $30, they might do price tiers where if the card is worth like $50 now or $100, you have to pay the 30 or whatever it is. I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, they already do that. I hate that. I'm saying, why not give a discount for new cards? Hey, new set of Pokemon comes out. If you send this set, we grade it $10 a pop instead of 30.
They do like the specials, but obviously that's not just for new. They do that for vintage stuff, for everything. And they'll probably bring those back. I don't know. I mean, it definitely could be interesting. Obviously the reason they're not doing any of this now is simply just they don't want any more cards. Yeah. They can't even handle it. So they're certainly not going to lower prices until they have a handle on things. And if they lowered prices to $10, it would be an avalanche. So
yeah. And Pokin Fund there says at $8, PSA was making money. Why not just charge 15 or 20 and make money and then grade everything? Yeah, well at $8 that was under old management. They have new management now, and they have a much more robust supply chain now too, which includes much more overhead. So I don't know that they would still be profitable at $8 per. They may still be very profitable at 15. No idea, right? Have no idea, but yeah.
I mean, I would think as they scale, they'd make even more money just instinctually. That they'd be able to do things slightly cheaper and make more on average per thing, but it might not work that way. That isn't always the case for businesses. Sometimes when they scale the scaling costs, actually they make less per item, but they just sell more of that item to make up for that. And so that could happen too. Again, yeah, we don't know the business model, but that would definitely be what they're thinking about. And then it's the short-term thinking, as I was saying before, of like, how do we make the most money versus the long-term thinking of how do we retain our control over these markets and the loyal customers. And if they're smart, and I'm sure they are, it's all about and if they really think this space is going to be huge, and I think all of the most successful companies have taken that approach, have taken the not burning their fans, the not, so we'll see.
Do you think like PSA or any other grading company eventually works NFTs or some sort of digital content in with your grade?
Could be, I mean, that's one thing where, some sort of authentication proof on the blockchain that you owned it, which helps with the custody, the proof of ownership over time, these types of things. Could be.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it'd be interesting. I would like that. I would like to have a digital collection of cards that you graded with them. And then as you move the card, the ownership of the image moves as well. I don't know. It'd be interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be for that. Be cool. Be a fun way to see my collection quickly online.
Exactly.
I'm not someone who is super on board with NFTs.
I'm not an NFT person either.
I'm like medium is what I would say. I think digital collectibles make sense. Clearly people can collect and enjoy things online that already exists in mass. People collect skins, all sorts of things they can show their friends in all these games. There's tons and tons of examples of where we can collect and enjoy things just online and in virtual worlds. The question is like the amount that people are saying it's going to like completely shift our lives and the value of some of these early projects. And that's the stuff that I like, maybe, but like, Gary Vee, you've been wrong like 100 times. And, he tends to show the clips that he was right about, but he's picked tons of apps and all sorts of things that he thought were going to blow up that have not. And that isn't hating on him, because like it is, but it's not saying that he isn't right or isn't smart or doesn't have good points on some of these things, and that he wasn't right. Maybe he was even right above average, amount of time. But yeah, just be careful. Be careful with these influencers. So
yeah, he's 100% on NFT train now. He basically doesn't talk about sports cards anymore now. He only talks about NFTs now.
Yeah, and that's obviously a core part of his business and a core part of probably what he wants his legacy to be, and all sorts of things. So he, when someone has a lot of their own personal pride and money and wrapped up into something, that should be another. Just be careful.
Well, he wants to own the Jets, and I mean, he's partnered now, because he owns a company, Fanatics, Candy, which is the NFT company. But Candy is partnered with Fanatics.
Breaking news: he owns Fanatics.
Yeah. So, I mean, but he's got the partnership with Fanatics for NFTs. So, I mean, obviously, he wants that to be huge.
Yeah, and
Yeah, there's a question. Are sports cards are they playable or just collectible? They are literally just collectible. There's no playing.
Lame. No, I'm just joking.
Hey, it's a huge issue. It's always funny. I enjoy Magic the Gathering as well. I don't collect it, but I do enjoy playing it. And it's I don't know. It's just strange to me that like Pokemon's so collectible and Magic's so not. It's kind of funny. What about numbered Pokemon cards? What's that going to do for you?
Yeah, that's a great topic. Yeah, dude, we should talk about that. I think I was going to bring that up earlier and I forgot. Yeah, we got into a really one of my friends who's in the Discord, and I talked for probably just 3 hours. A lot of it just like one-on-one or with just a couple other people in there, just going hard on. We were talking a lot about the Marvel cards and the serialized Marvel cards, if you're familiar with those, and what's up in that market. Yeah. And just in general, serialized, how people think about it in sports. How will Pokemon collectors feel about that? Would they like something like that? Would it have the similar effect to sports? Would it not be? And it was fun. A lot of speculation. So I'll put you on the spot first.
Okay. Chat saying I activated Dark Jake. See, I seem to have had an issue here. We got one here. I'll go to it. I think I don't know if it would be good or bad for Pokemon, but I think like if they just did like Brilliant Stars, it's just Brilliant Stars, but also for every card, including alt arts, there's a number to 100 variation or parallel, I guess you'd say. that would explode. That stuff would be so expensive. I mean, everything would be so expensive. 100 such a small, number to pick. If it was 10,000, it'd be a lot different. But I personally would be pro like just having some very, very low numbered stuff put into packs. And I don't really know why. I think honestly, just to get people to chase it, like if they want it, and it would just be a great rip for somebody. But obviously, if we're talking like 100, like you're just never ripping it. But I think it'd be cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talk of like maybe they could partner with Tops or Fanatics and do just like they did in the 90s, in the late 90s, early 2000s, partner with Tops and make those parallels again very similar, so that it wouldn't be like the TCG game and wouldn't affect that product, but it would be like an option for people. I don't know if you're familiar with like Tops Chrome yet or any of those. So those are like parallels for Pokemon.
The Tops Chrome, like the Pokemon sets.
Yeah. And like parallels that exist. You've got like the Techno, the Spectra, the different levels. For those who don't know what we're talking about, you have like a base design, and then you have different versions of that base design that are rare with different sort of holofoil patterns, different colors, that type of stuff. I would be definitely super excited by it. I think it would be super fun and enjoyable. I also, if those cards were going for like more than some trophies or vintage cards immediately, I would be one of the first people to come out and say, holy crap, like I think it would probably make some major stonkage and people chasing those and wanting to throw it up on their Instagram and build a community, all these types of things. It would be wild. I see, the thing is I really enjoy hype and the excitement and the stonkage. It's fun. I just also really worry about people and how they get affected by that sort of thing. So that would be my only concern, is like just the level of maturity. and then also like, yeah. And then also just the type of market manipulation like that can happen. And obviously all that exists anyway. And in some sense, it might actually help with that. Now, I'm really just thinking out loud, because when numbers are serialized, it's a bit easier to track them being sold. You really know how much of them there are, so people can't throw out in misinformation, which there's a ton of this year about how many of this booster box or this card is left or how rare something is. But I do think one thing that is a very difficult thing to measure is when you make a lot of 1 out of 100s, like, and let's look at sports, right? There are lots of cards that are 1 out of 5, one out of 1 that are worth $1, $10, $5, right? Many of them.
Yep.
And so part of that is understanding what makes a serialized card valuable. Why are some serialized, and maybe we can have this discussion because it's a really good one. What makes serialized, and then we can move it to Pokemon, what makes some serialized cards very valuable and others not? And then, in my opinion, the unbelievable nonsense going on in some modern serialized stuff, and you might share my opinion, you might not. I'm amazed at the prices that some of these things are able to get, these 1 out of 5s, 1 out of 50s, 1 out of 100s, when there's 1 out of 100 Luka Doncic or something in that set, but there's also 10 1 out of 100s and 10 1 out of 50s and 10, and all these variations that are all rare, and they're all going for like $100,000. And it's amazing to me how they're able to get those prices.
So this is a great topic. It's funny enough, I have a video tomorrow that is called Sheep by Parallels. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like, I hate it. But first, one thing you said there. So this is a precious metal gem, a PMG. They're very popular. The ones from the 90s are much more popular. It's just from the 2000s. But you talked about if you have the number on there, it may or may not help with fakes. In this community, the PMGs, they're all numbered to like 100 or less. Mm-hmm. And there's like the red is 100, the blue is 50, and the green's 15. There's not that many, right? That's it. And then so like people know the last sell on each one, because we got sleuths out there. They know that stuff. So it actually has helped. So if you had something numbered low enough, it would be good. Now, this whole idea, this is a good point. I would be anti-Pokemon bringing in a lot of different colors. Like, I think that if they did it and they put it in the TCG, like literally number it to 5 and just slip it in, and like, you either got one or you didn't, because good luck selling that stuff. Like, good luck finding someone wanting to sell that stuff, because I think, and this is the premise of my video tomorrow, that it's a joke. It's a sham. It's a sham that all these cards are numbered to 35. This year it's Select Football, which used to be a premium product. They wanted to keep it premium, so they made one of ones in the set. We always have one of ones. They made 55 one of ones, or 37 or something, like literally like 30 plus one of ones. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, this is a joke. This is ridiculous in my opinion. And again, the more you fragment, the more you make variety available, the more you send people in different directions in the hobby, and the more you just kind of reduce the price of the cards overall, which sounds great as someone who wants to buy cards, but we're all thinking about this long term. We want things to go up. And so you want to keep people as consolidated as possible, so that those prices go up, even though the print runs are a little bit higher.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely like there's some sort of sweet spot, right? Where, because if you don't have enough of them, then people don't open the product because you can't get one. Like the odds of like for example, like if you're going to get one in 1 out of 100,000 boxes, like that type of odds, a lot of people are just not going to open it and crack it and really search for them. It's just insane.
Not for that, right? Yeah. They're not going to search for it, right? Yeah.
But if you can get one in like 1 out of 50, 1 out of 100, even 1 out of 200, like when you start getting into that sort of amount, it's a lot more like that addiction that we all have.
Yeah.
that gambling breaking addiction, for all of us who have it, there's like, oh my gosh, like I could, the excitement of like, I'm going to sit down and open this box and I might pull that card. Like, even though I know I won't, it adds a lot to the experience. Like, even if you don't get the card, it adds a lot to the experience of opening, that you could pull it and you could even fairly realistically pull it. And that 100% would happen to Pokemon if they found, I mean, there's no doubt about that. Now, how would they manage that over time? I don't know. Do I hope Pokemon does it? Yes. Would I be worried if Pokemon does it? I would be anxious about how it would affect the market and how people would respond and what would happen, but it would be a lot of fun. I have to say, like, it would be a blast.
If they did, like, my goodness, I don't know why that's happening. If they did like a Willy Wonka, like golden ticket once every 3,000 cases, like, I don't think it would break the market or anything. It would just be fine. And the people that hit it, man, that sucker, they hit a lottery ticket.
Sure.
If they start doing it where there's a lot of different parallels and you add them all up and it's a print run of 20,000, like, that's probably an issue, because I think again, you're just chopping it up too much. So
yeah.
I would stick to one and just do it a super premium and do it a Willy Wonka, because like Pokemon does such a great job of giving you that feeling already. Like you talked about opening and trying to get the big one, like the Charizard Full Art coming out in Brilliant Stars, or one of these trainer cards that come in the reverse holo spot, right? Like, I don't know. They already do a good job of giving you stuff that you want to chase after anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it's Pokemon compared to all of the other sort of major TCGs has done the least amount of like rare cards. Now they do a lot of promos, which is part of, I think, how Pokemon makes up for that, because the promos, particularly from Japan, are so cool and collectible and enjoyable, and that it provides some of that. But as far as the set cards go, Yu-Gi-Oh has like a 1 out of 12 every box hits. Magic had like lottery hits and things. I don't know. I forget the exact numbers on them, but super low to hit those cards. Pokemon has never done like more than, 1 out of every 2 booster boxes. These types of odds, maybe slightly harder for a few things. You do have your gold cards that they did, which were harder to pull, but there were so few gold cards. Like generally in these sets, like there would have been just like 1 in Dragon Majesty or like 2 in Ultra Prism, for example, that the pull rate to actually pull one of those, there were about as many of those that existed as the Rainbow Rares, because there were more Rainbow Rares to choose from. Hopefully that makes sense for people. So even though the gold card was harder to pull, there were only 2 that you could pull. So there just was never, and the gold cards those got high values and people were excited about those back in the day. Now no one cares about them, which is interesting. They really, because Pokemon just made a lot of like cheap gold cards and people don't actually know which ones are rare versus the ones that aren't rare. It's a whole other topic, but yeah, it would be fascinating to see if they really did serialized. And Weiss is doing serialized. Magic, that's the thing that's going around, right? That Magic is going to start to do serialized.
Did Rudy predict Pokemon was going to do it too? I know he predicted Magic.
I'm sure he said that. I mean, I think lots of people say that it's inevitable, these types of, I have no idea, right? Like, I think if Pokemon continues to be successful and do well, they may not do it. So we'll see.
Yeah, you bring up a good point too. Just like, I mean, you talked about basically pack odds and checklist size, right? Just having one, even it's okay. It comes one every, case, but there's only one of them. So it ends up being enough of a population that people can get it, So
Yeah.
Pokemon,
to pull them the Charizard and the Rainbow Rare slot or whatever,
Yeah, they know what they're doing. I mean, they've done a great job of managing it. If they do it or don't do it, I don't like what Parallels have done to the sports card market. And I like, again, I mean, if they want to do a number to 5 or something ridiculous, like cool. But like, I really hope they don't do like numerous parallels. And I think chat's killing it because they're just talking about like what happens to set collecting, and it kills it. It just makes it where, okay, I want to get the blue set, or I want to get the green hollow set or whatever the heck the
Pokemon they're playing. There's the big thing in Pokemon, which is different than sports, is getting affordable product out to players now. And that's one of the concerns. If we hit we put really large, very expensive cards in the booster boxes will go up a lot, and then people won't be able to open it. Now, that isn't right. And I will say that argument's wrong because players don't actually open product, the hardcore players. They actually buy the singles, and so many people will be opening the product to chase for it that it won't be an issue. So I do want to dispel that. But it will affect your average collector who doesn't have that much money, who just wants to complete every set. And it's just like having fun. It would negatively impact them because it would raise the price on booster boxes. And and that is a large and maybe the largest, very likely the largest single group of people who are buying Pokemon are just people who just like to rip stuff, like to fill out a binder, and are just not, they just enjoy it. It's fun.
That's a really interesting thought because like you said, like, I mean, in chat's mentioned too, like collect them all, it's in the mantra. But like, I mean, sports card collecting up until like 1996, 1997 was set collecting. You got the base set of tops or whatever the main flagship product was. You got a base set of that. That's what you collected. And then that changed over time as they introduced rare premium cards, autos, jerseys, all this other crap. And so I do think it would be wise for Pokemon not to move away from that, because I do think that's been overall net negative on sports cards.
Yeah, it's a lot to consider. But of course I would be super excited.
I mean, come amazing.
On. So
you pull that Caterpie number to 25, boom, Caterpie's favorite Pokemon ever. It's immediate.
I love Caterpie.
So there we go. Caterpie's already up there. I like me some
Caterpie, Weedle, Diglett, some of my favorites.
Weedle. I never liked Weedle. But see, I had blue. That's why, I didn't get the Weedle. So.
Yeah. So I'm getting more into sports a little bit.
Okay.
So I was a big sports card collector when I was a kid. And still have all my stuff. So I've sort of just started with some of my favorite players and buying just Fleer Metal, some of the 90s sets that I really loved. I think I got like a full set with like a lot of the cards like already graded for like $100 or something. And it's fun, just super fun.
Those Fleer Metal sets are great. Yeah.
Beautiful cards. I love the design. It's fun. It's nice that a lot of the stuff in the 90s is just so affordable because it was, heavily printed that I can just go back and get it for like the same price I could have bought it for back then. It's great.
Yeah. So much of what I do is like kind of bargain, I guess you would say, because I like football, and football is not near as popular as basketball or baseball, and it's not near as expensive. And so to me, like there's just a ton of like phenomenal cards out there. I'll show you this one here. I picked this up for $40. And like you talked about earlier, Marvel's just exploding. That's Jerry Rice and Spider-Man. Like Jerry Rice and Barry Sanders are the two most expensive football players of the 90s. And then Spider-Man obviously is like the most expensive Marvel character. And I'm just like, yes, if that was Michael Jordan and Jerry Rice, it'd be like a, $2,000 card or something. It'd be ridiculous, in Spider-Man, not Jerry Rice, Spider-Man and Jordan. But so there's just that to say there's a ton of great deals. I know you said basketball specifically, but there's so many cheap cards out there. It's crazy. There's so many great cheap cards.
Yeah, I mean, I've always watched football my whole life, and I'm a football fan. But for some reason, I never got as connected to the players. I mean, I know why. It's because they all have helmets on, and I barely know what they look like. And there's so many of them. In basketball, I'm seeing them, all the time and in interviews and stuff. But, I I'm a Patriots Celtics guy. Always offend a bunch of people with being from Boston.
Must be nice to know what it's like to win and people not tell you you're a cheater. Hashtag go Astros,
Not anymore. I barely remember winning.
Yeah, it's already gone, huh?
Yeah, I kind of remember what it was like growing up. And
my goodness.
And if we only won like one a year of like the three major sports, it was a bad year. Usually we'd win like two for a while.
Any sports card fan that you had that was subscribed to the channel that wasn't like a Boston fan, just unsubscribe. Just no, stop it. This is too much.
But yeah, give me some opinions on the sports card market. Let's do a little bit of that maybe, and then we can go back in a chat. Like what are you looking at? Like where do you feel like the opportunity is, generally speaking? Give us sort of an overview of for my audience who might be somewhat interested. And also I always preach that it's very good. All these markets are very similarly related in a lot of ways, and it's great to learn about what's going on there to help you better kind of understand your own market.
There may be a little bit of correlation here, actually. You mentioned that. So I talked about how I'm a big football guy, so that's what I'm looking at. But I do think that what I'm going to say can apply to other sports. And it may sound familiar for Pokemon too. So a lot of people right now, again, they're probably about 40 that are in the sports world, and they're looking at a lot of 80s stuff and a lot of 90s stuff. So the popular cards from the 90s have gone to the moon, especially like basketball and baseball. And well, not really, rare cards in baseball have gone up. Football, not so much, so I look at that. But where I've really been deep diving is in the 2010s, the early 2010s specifically. Like there's a lot of great football cards there for anyone in chat that may know. Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, these guys that people, they're just not looking at those cards because they're either looking at only rookie cards or that 90s stuff, or they're looking at this ultra modern stuff that's coming out just right now. And I think there's a lot of stuff that's really slept on from especially the early 2010s, because the print runs, when you look at the early 2010s, are very small, right? They did not make a lot of this product. There's not a lot of hype around that, and there hasn't been much hype yet. And that's why you can still find it so cheap, because most people won't do the work to go find out what's rare. In fact, this is what my whole video is about tomorrow, is like in sports cards, they, on the rare stuff, they're going to print on the back of the card what it's number 15 of 35, right? And so the average Joe, they go out and they say, well, it's numbered 35, so it's a low print. So this is awesome. It's a great card. But what they don't realize is, there's 10 other ones numbered to 35. There's 50 of them numbered to 100. That, if 75 numbered to 1, it's really not rare. It doesn't really stand out. It just happens to have a tint and a shimmer to it, all right? I say a pixie sneezed on it, right? And it's just whatever color came out. But when you look at that stuff back in the early 2010s, I mean, you can see that they didn't make more than 200 of this, and they didn't make parallels. And no one's looking at this stuff, and it's dirt cheap. And that's really a number I've really kind of have ingrained in my head right now. I want to know that there's about 200 or less of these made across whatever various parallels they decided to make that particular year. So that's what I've been looking at.
Yep. Just trying to look at supply and demand fundamentals, right? The supply side, understanding the rarity, trying to figure out people don't know about the rarity of this type of thing, and then trying to understand or theorize why the demand isn't there, why the demand hasn't been there. And then why, coming up with theories of why the demand might be there in the future, whether it's because influencers or people haven't talked about it, whether it's because of a generation thing. As you said, maybe 40-year-olds are people with the most money, 50-year-olds not interested in that stuff yet, but maybe will be in the future. Some of the younger people as they make more money. One thing I wonder is, how much do you think driving prices and driving the price movements, how much do you think it's being driven up by people buying stuff and putting it away for a long time versus people buying it for 3 months and then looking to flip it? And in sports, obviously you can't throw out a number, but
yeah,
I feel like it explained a lot of the activity this year.
So yeah, certainly over the last 2 years, anything ultra modern, I think basically was bought with the intent of selling within like the next 3 months. Like in ultra modern for everyone out there is like 2017 and newer. So I think all that stuff, it was heavy speculation on prospects, Jason Tatum, Luka Doncic, which these guys are still prospects, even though they're a few years in. It's heavy, speculation on them, hoping they're going to do well. And then when they do, moving off their card. And then everyone got caught holding the bag at some point because they just made too many of those cards. Right? If they didn't overprint it, and if they didn't make a million different parallels, and maybe people would have been okay, but because there was just so many cards available and people were trying to flip it in 3 months. It didn't work out for them. And so that's why, a lot of what I've showed or what I've talked about is stuff that I think like 10 years from now, it'll be good. That's kind of stuff. And I think that big yellow card, there's a 65 Joe Namath. It's a big, it's like one of the holy grails for football cards. And like, that's one I bought 6 months ago, and I'm just probably never going to sell it. And so cards like that, I think they get bought and stored. No one's moving that stuff. It's very rare. Good luck finding that stuff on the open market. I mean, you'll find a couple. There's some that are more rare than that. But, anything that's newer, certainly 2017 and newer, I still think today, for the most part, people are buying with the intention of flipping in the next 12 months at least.
Yeah, I always wonder what percentage of it is being driven by people who really want to be here long term, people who really like it, and people who really also sort of believe in it or believe that the community will be here in the long run, versus people sort of, trying to sell through as much as possible. I mean, there are no answers to these questions, but when I look at the different hobbies, I try to speculate on sort of, do I think this hobby has more of that or less of that? Or where are we at in sort of that, how many new people are coming in, starting like short-term fly-by-night type businesses where they're not really long-term businesses, but they're just trying to make like a quick buck with their business venture, versus how many people are moving into the space to create something that'll be sustainable for the next 50 years or 30 years. And I think we've seen a lot of those entities. A lot of these card companies opening up, some of them are probably in it to try to make some money quickly. Card grading companies, auction houses, like all these types of things. But you also see companies and individuals, maybe like ourselves, who are trying to create channels, trying to create communities, trying to create collections, investments, all sorts of things, because we believe in sort of the long term, trying to create things and thinking about it in a little bit of a different way. And I do think when you have hobbies that are built up of people who are trying to create long-term infrastructure, for the hobby to kind of help support it and build it up, versus sort of that short-term, like, we need to drive these prices up quickly or everyone's going to panic and leave. Like, I felt a lot of that from people over the last year and a half, and I saw some of that in sports. What was your impression in sports, really being in that hobby? What was it like for you to sort of witness that, as it was going on?
I think there was an unusual amount of people that moved in the sports card market in 2019. And I think if you go back and watch Gary Vee content, I think that probably has a lot to do with it. And I think a lot of these jokers bought, this was the card. It was Luka Doncic. A lot of them bought Luka Doncic. There's base Prism rookie and a PSA 10, of which there ends up being, now we know there's 20,000 of them. They were buying them at $20 to $50 a pop. And towards the middle to end of 2020, they bought these in 2019 or early 2020, 9 months, to 16 months later, it's a $2,000 card. And so they're selling it. They're making a ton of money. And then they're making a ton of content too, talking about how I made $20,000, $40,000, $60,000 flipping cards. And then that brings in a lot of other people. And then all those people start to buy cards, and it fever pitches the market. And, so we're talking, that's the fall of 2020. Well, come the spring of 2021, I guess the bill came due for some reason or another. That's when it hit. And people realized, guys, I've been doing this for 6 months and I'm not making any money. And people just left the hobby. And people, they ran out in masses. Now, the hobby is still 5 to 6 times bigger in my estimations than it was prior to people coming in 2019. So overall, I think it's healthy. But just to answer your question, I think there was a huge part of like influence. I think it started with Gary Vee, and then it goes to the people that he influenced that made money. And then it goes to the people that they influenced that lost money.
Yeah. I remember that whole period with Gary Vee. I remember Gary Vee coming out a lot saying, like, I didn't have that effect on it. It was already happening. I just noticed it or noticed the trend. I think it's always very interesting when influencers' perceptions of their own sort of impact is a very interesting thing to me.
I kind of talk about niche cards, because it's football, and then it's like stuff here and there, and it's stuff you can't really find, but it's $10, it's $10, but it's also really rare, but it's just not stuff that people like notice. But I notice when I mention it on a channel, on a video or something, you are not finding it the next day on eBay. Those suckers are gone. It just takes 1 or 2 people for the stuff that I'm looking at. So but when you've got Gary V's level of influence, even he can dry up a 10,000 or 20,000 card market.
Yeah, I always wonder if it's like egomania, that they think they're so smart that they really think that they like understood something instead of they caused it. Like they really need to believe that they deserve their success because they're so much more talented, rather than just realizing, no, like a lot of success just happens in the world because you were an influencer. Like that's why, that's where a lot of it comes from. And that's something, as you said, it's like, I was very intentional from the start of this channel to try not to talk about like specific cards, and to try not to tell people specifically what to buy or what to do, and to talk more about like economics, broader principles of supply and demand, fundamentals, these types of things, because I very much didn't want to do that. And I've tested it out a few times, and yeah, I mean, every time I've talked about something, it all got gobbled up. I had sellers, some of my friends who had that card sitting on eBay for like a year. As soon as I made that video, it got bought up. They asked the seller, why did you buy it? And they said, Pokenomics video. So it's like, it's real, right? And
yeah.
And when you think about it, there's 10 cards listed on eBay and a video that has 10 million views. Everyone sees that video. Why do you think it's like they want us to take crazy pills that we don't believe that has an impact? Why do you think Gatorade sponsors people, these influencers, to talk about them? Because they know that 1% or 5% or 3% of the audience is going to convert. The sales are going to convert for them. Mm-hmm. It's the same exact thing with all this stuff. When you're influencer, when someone says something, puts it out there, a percentage of that is going to convert. It's going to move the market. And just as you said, that has a snowball effect, because now it starts to move. Now they seem like a genius and like they're right. Then more people start to listen to them next time they say it. They seem even more and more right over time. And then eventually there are no more buyers. And then it completely collapses because nobody wanted it. Yeah. They were all just buying it to make money, which is exactly what happened with Luka Doncic. Those cards, it's, and it's just, to me, it's amazing how I just wish, this is a whole nother topic, but I just wish the influencers, it would just come out and just be like, yeah, that's what happened. But I don't know.
The worst one, like the worst thing I see, and it was a genre in sports cards. There was, I'm not going to name names, but this is what they do. They have a Patreon, and you get, if you're part of their Patreon, you get early access to what they're buying. You get it like 3 days early. Yeah. And then, so they release a video and they say, these 3 cards are amazing. They're going to go to the moon. Watch out for them. So they release that video, their Patreons see that video. And then what do their Patreons go do? Of course, they go buy those cards. So then that video hits YouTube 3 days later, and people, they're watching it. They're like, oh, that is a cool card. Let me go look at it. And it's already, up 35, 40% from where he was saying it in the video. And then it creates this panic, this FOMO. You're like, oh shit, I need to move in now. This thing's going to the moon, baby. And then, so they move in and buy it. Now it goes up 40, 50% from where it originally was. The guy who made the video selling is happy. His Patreons are happy, and everyone else loses. So I hate it.
Yeah. Some of the Pokemon creators, it's been the same thing this year. And I think some of them genuinely don't realize it, or deny, or they just want to think that like they have some sort of magic taste or ability to like predict what people are going to like or something from talking to some. It's very interesting. It's very hard to avoid. And here's the reality is we love talking about cards. Mm-hmm. Like you and I love talking about what we think is a smart buy. Yep. It's fun.
Yep.
But we have to like be very careful of that because we don't want to influence other people's opinions. But the main reason I want to do it is because it's fun and I want to share it and I'm excited. You know what I mean? So it creates that struggle there. As far as what you're describing, which is if the guy is selling it, is a classic pump and dump scheme, which every crypto channel did years ago. And all these people right now are getting screwed by the FBI. This person that you talk about, if sports cards and collectibles becomes a security, which there's talk that might happen, they will get investigated by the FBI potentially if they're big enough for that. Like that's illegal. If they can prove that they were selling the thing that they were actively. And so for real, like people, it's a very unregulated space. People do a lot of illegal stuff. They do illegal stuff with taxes. They do, there's a lot of that scammy stuff, and it sucks. It sucks because it does put some negative taste. It does create toxicity in the hobby. and it does turn people against each other. And Pokemon has had quite a bit of toxicity this year against money and people making money, and a lot of that comes from that sort of stuff. In the sports card world, what has been people's feelings about the scalping, about people making money, about people buying up stuff and then selling it higher? How do you think most content creators, most average collectors, how do they view all of it?
Yeah, most people hate it. They call them evil flippers, and they're not wrong. That's I don't know. I mean, like literally, like if we're talking about just buying retail product to resell at eBay, I hate that.
Yeah.
I hate that. It's so ridiculous. We already talked about that. You know, the man,
Yeah.
but to me, it's Panini's fault or Topps fault. They need to, or whoever charges the prices, they need to increase the price of the product, you know, to stop that or produce more. So overall, that's been pretty negative. As far as like guys who like flip cards and made money, like, you know, buying and selling cards, I think there's a decent amount of people that hate it and a decent amount of people that approve of it. I think, like, to me, if you did it to me in a way that was like, you know, respectable, then I'm good with it. Like, you know, somebody mentioned in chat Sasha T, and a lot of people hate on Sasha T, but like to me, Sasha T just grinded, and you know, I have mad respect for him, even though I've never met him or talked to him. To me, he just grinded and he just worked deals, and you know, he had a lot of clout because of who he was, and he built this YouTube presence and stuff like that. But he wasn't saying like, go buy these cars and then selling them. You know, he was showing like, I bought this $20,000 card and I traded it for this $30,000 card, you know? And it's like, you know, he wasn't influencing the market as he was going along. He just built influence for himself, being a figure, I guess.
Yeah, I appreciate the nuanced answers, you know, and which I think this requires for me, you know, and it's really a case by case basis, and none of us are saints, and all of us are competitive, and all of us also want to build collections and get stuff for ourselves, while we also, to varying degrees, want to help other people, not take advantage of people, care about other people's well-being, and care about the overall hobby. And you're constantly trying to balance all of those things. So how much you share, how honest you are, how much you know, there were a lot of people that weren't coming out telling people not to buy, you know, when they knew that people shouldn't be buying, but they also weren't coming out telling people actively you should buy. And then you have the people who are actively telling people that you should buy and selling the very things that they were telling people is investable and is going to go up. And so clearly there are varying levels there, you know, and it's and then there's also just the thing that I really do think that some people believe it. Like some people really believe that they have some sort of God-given ability that they just like sometimes when I listen to Gary Vee, I really think he believes it. Like, you know, I don't know. It's like he really believes that somehow he's so much above the rest, like you and I, and just like your average like smart person, when we're all just like about the same. you know, and have, you know, and the difference is clout, and the difference is influence, and the different, you know, it's very interesting.
Yeah. I mean,
he's very smart, right? He's very, you know, very smart guy. There are thousands of smart guys in all of these hobbies, you know? So it's interesting that yeah,
there's no question. Like he's smart and he's done well, and going back to basics for him was wine. And you know, what's he do? He starts flipping wine. He makes videos about it on YouTube. Like what he is an influencer, and he is great at it. And it's not a knock. Like he's good at it. That's awesome. You know, own it. Like that is what you are. It's fine. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's I've seen this question a couple of times. I want to answer it. It's basically, am I seeing people from the sports card hobby like convert over to Pokemon? I would say that it's pretty few right now. You know, again, I'm 30. Most people in the sports cards, you know, based on my YouTube analytics, are 35 to 45. I think that, you know, Pokemon probably appeals to a little bit to 35 and younger. And so I think that you might see more conversion over the next, again, 10 to 20 years. I think you're going to see a lot more of that. But right now it makes sense to me. I mean, look, most of the guys talk about garbage pail kids, not Pokemon, right? So, I mean, it's really just a different segment of the market right now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you know, that's something I really don't know, is the demographics of sports. Like what percentage of the people are above 50, between 40 and 50, 30 to 40, 20 to 30? Like what would you, throwing out you know, just your own sort of speculation from being in the hobby for 10 years or 15 years, you said 20 years, maybe even said, you know, what's your impression?
I guess imagine a graph left to right, left is 0, right is 100 years old. In the middle, you've got this gap from 35 to 45, and that's 25% of the market. And now it's normally distributed from there. That's kind of what I would say.
Okay. Okay. So 25% between 35 and 45, and the rest kind of, the biggest chunks are the next two next to that, and they're around the similar.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. And it could even be 30, 35%. I'm trying to remember my YouTube analytics, right? Because that's what I'm thinking of. But it's just so many guys that are really in that, like around 40. That's really the big one. And I was surprised. I thought there'd be more younger people involved in it just when it blew up, but my analytics doesn't show that. But again, my channel's a little bit different. I don't do the like hot take stuff. So
Sasha's like 30-ish.
Sasha, he's I think like 23.
He's 23.
Yeah, I mean, he might be 25 now, something like that, but he's like for sure mid. That's why I'm like, to me, like he literally starts this whole thing with $10,000, and I get like it's just great timing, but a lot of people started with great timing, and he's the only one who turned it into freaking $1 million cards. Like, I got mad respect for Sasha.
I mean, I love Sasha's content. Like when he was making those deal videos, like it was super fun to watch. Did I also worry that it was irresponsible? Yeah. To be completely honest. So I feel I have like a foot in both of those camps of like, first of all, he did great. He worked really hard. He had a lot of fun, and he created a lot of fun and enjoyment and hype and excitement, and he didn't come out, as you said, saying like, you should be buying this, or like, this is what you should do, overtly. And even if he had, like, there are a million stock channels right now telling everyone to buy stocks, everyone to buy crypto all the time. Every moment is a good time to buy. There's never a bad moment, and it's just like, how many people are you going to, cast out and say are bad, just because they didn't like go out of their way to warn their customers that they probably shouldn't be doing this. So I don't know if that's a personal decision how people feel, but yeah.
Basic Trainer says, I want a great name, by the way, Basic Trainer. I want to see a channel where it's just collection, show and tell, and get away from markets. I mean, so again, when I go back to like where I like Pokemon content better, I feel like there's a lot more of that, again, probably to do the restriction of various cards. But I really am trying to move my channel more in that direction. I feel like over the last 2 weeks, I've said multiple times, like, I'm just over charts. I hate them. And that's not true. Look, I like numbers. I like doing analysis, but I just hate the content because so many people, the thing that makes sports cards content, I think, difficult is that because it's such a huge variety of cards, like, eBay, if you take a picture of a Pokemon card, it'll tell you what the card is, right? That's pretty cool. But it can't do that for sports cards because there's too many different sports cards. And so when you start looking at those graphs, you start looking at the same 30 graphs every time because it's the only ones with, enough of a sample size to mean anything. And so it's just really boring content. And so, like, again, I just keep showing cards that I think I'm like, look, I don't know what comps are. I don't know anything. I just know I think it's super cool. And at this price, I'm all about it, Have you felt like it's difficult? Like, I don't know, man, because I've been thinking about it since we've been talking, because like it feels like it would be difficult for you to not pump cards, even if you're talking in generalities about like markets or about sets, because there's so few. It feels like.
So, I mean, if you watch my channel, I have talked a lot about certain things, like a few things, and I am almost positive that I've affected those prices in a positive way and increased them. Now, I try to go very into detail about the fundamentals and why you should buy them or why I'm buying them. And I talk about them as a tool so that people can understand, if you never talk about anything and you just talk about principles over and over again, it can be hard for people to like apply that directly. So I will use examples to explain concepts.
Yeah.
That to me is the way that I can have the least impact on the market while providing the most teachable value, but I'm still having an impact on the market, like in those tiny cases, but it's much, much less. I think for the amount of value and teaching I'm doing compared to the amount of like price impact I'm having, it's a net good.
Okay. I like it.
But I do think you need to be careful, right? And one thing we always talk over and over on this channel about is the golden rule of investing, no matter what it is you should understand why you're investing in something. You should not listen to a single other human being on this planet. And that is not the case in stocks, crypto, Pokemon cards, sports, I would venture the vast majority of people who are investing don't know that much about what they're investing in. So
it's probably the case. Yeah.
But they had an expert tell them. And oftentimes that works out because the expert is smart and knows what they're doing and they mirror their trades and they do end up making money or these types of things. But it's a dangerous game because you could also get someone who's a pump and dumper or a manipulator and you're going to be holding the bag of their scheme. Poke Fun says, thought on the Marks cards, PSA middleman drama with millions owed to PSA and folks like Card Collector 2 having to get his card Marks had himself. You familiar with what's going on there?
I am. Yeah. Are you?
No, not specifics. Okay. I've heard that I've heard that there have been these large cases of people leaving their cards basically at PSA, right? Because they can't like pay for them. Is that part of this?
That is. So it's similar. So that is an issue. And I guess it kind of ties to this. So he talks about Card Collector 2. Card Collector 2, the gentleman's name is Ryan. He's a young shop owner in Columbus, Ohio. He's very well known in the sport. I mean, might be the single main figure in the sports card hobby at this point, you know. So people would group sub with him. And I'm sure, do you have group subs in Pokemon, right? Or is that, yeah. So they're group subbing with Ryan in Columbus. Middleman,
yeah.
Yep. And then so now he's supposed to take the cards and ship them over to PSA and have them graded. So they group sub with Ryan, and now Ryan, what he did instead of sending them to PSA, he was sending to this gentleman named Marks, and Marks, who lives, I guess, next to the facility at PSA, is taking them, and now he's group subbing them for Ryan to PSA because he had a good relationship with PSA, so he could get lower prices, and also the belief that handing it off, with gives you faster turnaround times. Now, this gentleman Marks had about, I think, $1.2 million worth of grading fees that is going to be due. Of that, about 10% belong to Card Collector 2 out there in Ohio. That's why his name comes up here. Marks took that money that he was, that he received, the revenue that he received for doing this. And as you know, PSA charges on the back end. So what he did was he used it essentially as a loan. I mean, I don't want to say as a loan. He took it as revenue and he put it into his business and he tried to expand his business. Okay, well, here we are 8 months later, a year later, the bills come due and he doesn't have money because he put it in his business and it didn't do that great because, hey, the market wasn't that great over the last 9 months. Mm-hmm. And so now it's been this huge issue of, well, Ryan Card Collector 2 didn't tell his customers that he was going through a middleman and it wasn't in the contract, yada, yada, yada. But what Ryan did was he went ahead and paid all the fees for all his cards to PSA as well. So he's now double paid. Wow. But now it's this huge issue of, for everyone else, what's going to happen. And PSA's come out and said that, the people will get their cards back, but it's just this huge mess. And a lot of people think Marks is a scammer. I think he's more of a bad businessman, but overall to sum it all up, all this happened. PSA has now said that they're going to change their regulations with group submitters. They're going to expect a deposit up front.
That sounds, unless he has a lot of money that he has stored in a bank and he's trying to hide from people, that's not a scam, guys. Whoever thinks that's a scam. A scam is something where you intentionally dupe people to steal their money. This is a situation where he sounds like he lost a ton, his own money, lost his entire business, his credibility, and a ton of other people's money because he made a huge mistake and way over leveraged himself on credit. Unless he's like has some sort of offshore bank or he's like, taking the money, I mean, whatever. But
you know how it is. Like people say, like, they think like, okay, I paid this guy $25 to group sub to PSA. And then they know in their head, they'll say, okay, well, he's paying PSA 23. So he's getting $2. So they think in their head, like that $23 goes straight to PSA, but it's not how it works, especially because PSA doesn't want it right away. It goes into whoever the group subber is, it's revenue for them. And now they have a liability for $1.2 million. They're going to have to pay down the line. It's on them to be responsible enough to have the money available, when that comes due. But
so he reinvested that money into sports cards at the height or at one of the high points, and then all of his cards deteriorated. He wasn't able to sell and okay. Bingo. Yeah, I mean that's not a scam. That's just. I mean, it's unethical, definitely, but it's not like an intentional scam where he meant to screw people over. But it's very unethical because that's not his like. He basically risked other people's money so that he could get richer. So basically he used their money as a bank loan, basically, so that he could invest on stuff that's highly speculative to try and flip it and make more money rather than putting it aside understanding that needed to be there, that was other people's, money that he needed, that was his ethical responsibility as a business to have that in cash. And this is what creates a house of cards and has markets collapse, because now he needs to liquidate everything and sell things at a loss. And when you have hundreds of people do that, it's a disaster. And that's why markets collapse.
Kevin is pretty on that this is fraud thing, but I would just say it's not other people's money. Once it's given to him, it's his money. It's revenue for him, and now he's got a liability on the balance sheet. And so I don't know. I wouldn't say that it's other people's money. He does have a liability come due, but I don't. To me, that's just revenue that has yet to be recognized. But
it's not fraud, I would think, illegally, unless there was a contract signed that would stipulate what he would do with the money in the interim.
Right. Yeah.
It's unethical, though, from just a human moral standpoint, and it's extremely dangerous. And obviously, he was willing to do that. Now that might be part of the issue of, now as a hobby, we can learn, like, when you do business with the middlemen, you should get assurance. They either need to be big enough, or they need to have enough capital that they always keep in cash in order to cover. That might be something that you might want to get in writing if you're doing a big submission with someone or some sort of thing going forward. It can be a lesson.
Yeah. I mean, and Gary's saying he used money like a no interest loan. Like if you, this is a scenario that I would say you had, you just did a contract with HP and you gave them $1 million, and you're going to expect some computers delivered in 12 months. They take that money, and it's not your money that's dedicated to those computers. It becomes their cash, and they're going to make money off of that money until they deliver your computers. And then they're going to deliver your computers. What he didn't do is he didn't deliver the cards, right? That's just kind of the issue, is he didn't end up doing it. Because what he should have done, look, it was $1.2 million or something like that. He should have put it in a 3%, 4% interest loan, bank account, and make $30,000-$40,000 off of it, and just keep doing that. Just keep doing. That's a free 30-40 grand for your. That's just keep doing that, man.
Yeah. Who knows how leveraged he was at that point, though? Like, he might have been so leveraged as he was doing that he actually was paying off credit cards or off other sorts of debt or right. Crazy loans. Like, he might not have even been able to do that because he was already so in the negative at that point. Like, who knows what happened, right? But it's very dangerous, right? And these, Ponzi schemes, it's not a Ponzi scheme because, it's different, but it can function very similarly, where you keep needing more money to pay off the poor financial decisions you're making to make it seem like you're, able to be viable. You need more and more customers, and it's highly unethical. And we're not lawyers here, so I could be wrong. Like, this actually could be, legally fraud doing something like this, even if you don't sign a contract. I don't know that for sure, but yeah. My instinct would be that unless the contract states that, it's more like he's bankrupt now, basically. Like, he has to go bankrupt.
I do think there is a level of criminality here. Again, with the assumption that everything I've said is true, and who knows if it is. I have no idea, guys. Just with the scenario that we've dreamt up here, because he filed for bankruptcy, I believe, and I think under the bankruptcy, I don't know if he filed for 7 or not, but I think people have the right to call the cops and ask for their assets back, because they still own those cards. Like, those are their cards. But PSA has already said that everyone's going to get their cards back, so it's not going to be an issue.
Yeah. So PSA is going to take a loss.
Everyone's going to get their cards back, not graded. So they're not taking a loss.
Well, they still are with the time, probably, and energy. And
yeah, of course. Yeah. Like, just from that, they're taking the loss they're probably going to take anyway. But so PSA said, like, I think they're working with Marks because he's got the master sheet that's sent to PSA for them to figure out, what goes where and stuff like that.
Great story. Wow.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. And then, again, card collection too, being wrapped up in this is really the big deal, because he really is the young face of the hobby. And, and people get all caught up in arms about it. I'm just like, man, how long has he been doing group submitting? Maybe 2 years at most. Like, he, just like everyone else in this hobby, is still learning how to operate this stuff, how the supply chain works, how to do things. And he realizes now, and he said multiple times on social media, he made a mistake. He's not going to do it again. He ponied up right away the 1.2 or the $120,000 that he owed. And good on him for doing that. He learned from it, and he seems to have learned from it. So right on,
Yeah. To me, it sounds like he got duped as well. And there was an unethical thing that happened to him, and it hurt his business. Now, should he have done the due diligence to make sure that, like, like he's the one now really, and who should do what I said, right? Which is have this contract that you need to keep that cash available to pay PSA. Like you have to have that in liquid cash at all times, or I'm not doing business with you on a massive scale, right? Like that's the lesson.
Right.
But I mean, from that little snippet, I don't know anything in, too much. It sounds like, I mean, he's like a really stand-up great guy, right? Generally speaking, like
everyone swears by him. Yeah,
super
Ryan,
professional. Yeah. I mean, he seems, every video I've seen of him seems like just super professional, honest about everything. Definitely a hustler and hard worker and really good at what he does, but not in like any sort of sleazy way. Like some other guys in the Pokemon.
I'm glad we brought this up because I think this may have ramifications in Pokemon too, because now they're saying that PSA is going to group subbers now saying pay us because they're saying we're not going to have this happen again. And, I don't know how big group subbing is in the Pokemon world to PSA, but if it's big, I mean, we might very well have an instance where you see this kind of thing with big group subbers for Pokemon as well.
Well, luckily our community one here on this channel, James from Z&G Emporium, is a very ethical, honest guy and was an accountant. And I believe everyone is getting their cards. And all the anger is coming from the fact that it's taken forever, which is on PSA. And I think he kept the money and was pretty smart about how he did things, it sounds like. But
if not, you're not going to see James in the chat again, I'm guessing.
So, yeah, I mean, I that's my complete instinct is just like young entrepreneur trying to figure out something that he hasn't done before, being expected to be perfect, being in an incredible amount of spotlight and under the microscope. And then he basically handled it perfectly, apologized, owned up, and paid for it immediately. It's like, what else can you ask from a person?
Yep. 100%. Yeah. I mean, the thing that he did wrong was he didn't tell his customers that he was sending it to another middleman, for faster turnaround time and lower fees. So,
so the anger is that he was profiting off of, he wasn't really doing very much. So people are angry at him. So I misunderstood. People are angry.
No. I mean, so people aren't really mad at Ryan. They're just mad that he didn't tell them that he was doing this. Yeah. They don't even care about the stuff behind it. But to me, I'm like, when you look at what he was doing, it was no different than what Marks was doing because he was sending your money right out the door too, and wasn't giving it to PSA. It was the exact same thing, even though it feels different. But still, I mean, that's not a knock on Ryan. I'm just saying, like, overall, like, it is what it is, right? They're just trying to promote their business and grow. And one didn't run his business well enough, when the bill came due.
Again, not really knowing the situation, my only instinct or response would be like if I was sending to Ryan and I thought that he was sending directly.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I thought that was the business model. And I thought that one, there's a trust thing of like, I trust Ryan and I don't trust this other guy. That's a problem. Like I want to know the chain of custody, which I think is very reasonable for people to be, upset about that. The other thing would be like, how much is Ryan making? And is he actually like doing the work, or why am I not just then sending straight to this other guy if I can do it for cheaper? What is the benefit of sending through Ryan if I can send it through this other guy through cheaper? And I would want to understand the business. Is it that Ryan is sending so much to Mark's cards that Mark's is taking a lower rate from Ryan? Probably, right?
Yeah, probably so. Yeah.
So it's sort of like they're basically splitting Marx's usual gain per card. And so really you as a person out there is actually paying the same, whether you go through Ryan or go through Marx directly. In that case, basically Ryan is just making money off of his fame and celebrity and people trusting him because they're going to send it through him more than they're going to send it through Marx. And that, I don't know.
We would have to know the demographics of like how he got the cards, because if a lot of them were handed off in person, that's a benefit too, because he has a physical shop in Ohio where people could hand off to, and then they ship from there. Right. So
sure.
There's a lot of assumptions in that and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, that the people did call out, like, he should have told people that he was subbing through someone else also, just so that they know their cards were going through another middleman, regardless of the money.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Thank you for explaining that to me.
Yeah, I'm surprised you hadn't heard about it. I mean, it's definitely a sports cards only thing right now, but like when PSA, the announcement was, I mean, literally, I guess 2 days ago or something. I mean, it's like,
yeah, we've had our own drama here. case you didn't know.
Yeah. Fair enough.
No, but yeah, someone mentioned it in a chat at some point, but a week ago or so in a live, or maybe even less, because you said it's only 2 days.
It may have been like last Friday. They might have been talking about it. That might have been when it happened. It did. It was like Thursday, Friday last week is when it happened. Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy. Let's go for like another 18 minutes. Is that cool? Yeah. And then we'll, and I've had a great time. Would love to have you on the channel again. I'm also going to appear on Dakota's channel, I think is the plan. So go sub to him after this and, come hang out with us there too. We'll have a mixed Pokemon sports audience. I think it'll be fun.
That'll be fun. I'll say this to the people kind of asking how many people are like getting into Pokemon from sports cards. I should have said this earlier. Yeah. I was really nervous about telling my audience that I was buying sports cards. I thought they were just going to roast me, man. I thought it was just going to be awful. And they loved it. I got a huge positive reaction. And it's really weird too, because I only did 2 videos on it, but I mentioned it in a live. But the 2 videos, like they started off pretty slow, because my audience doesn't want to watch it. But I think somehow the Pokemon community got wind of it because it was just really weird. Like suddenly 3 days, boom, they got huge spikes in views, which was, I don't know. It was just, I hadn't seen a video like that before on the algorithm. It was kind of interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I got recommended your video. So there you go. Other Pokemon people got recommended it. Probably it wasn't just me.
Yeah. So that's I don't know. I just thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah. The mysterious algorithm.
And then someone asked if I PC any Pokemon. I don't even PC players really. I do not build PCs around specific players, teams, Pokemon, anything. I kind of find like just generalities that I like. I don't, for football, I mean, for sports, I told you it's like football stuff. I mean, for Pokemon right now, it's just kind of like first gen guys that I think that are awesome cards that I can find for nothing, like that's just kind of what I'm digging on right now.
Full art, Dragonite Evolutions EX. It's a good one.
Stuff like that, man. I mean, that's it.
Let's see. We'll take a few more questions, guys, if you have any.
I did see you say in a video a long time ago, like you recommended diving into like what I don't even want to say you recommended, but maybe it's just something like you kind of do is like you just kind of find yourself diving into specific sets at a time and then kind of rotating and it kind of keeps it fresh. Do you still kind of do that or, how do you go about it?
I mean, so so just for like my private collection, what I'm looking at and enjoying, yes, I tend to be like into certain things as a collector and enjoying that the most. Mm-hmm. I want to build a museum of cards and a humongous like warehouse crazy store museum of cards one day. Basically what Mile High Comics is for comic books. And so I'm trying to buy massive amounts of everything all the time, if possible. And I'm trying to put a lot of it back always and as much as I can, because I want to create that. And so I'm buying everything all the time, and everything all the time that is undervalued is the real truth. Yeah, so there's nothing, there's basically nothing that I won't buy. It's just all about price point. And I truly enjoy it all. Like there's certainly things that I don't like as much. And but I can't think of anything on the top of my head where it's like that set I just hate so much. I'm not going to, I mean, everyone knows on this channel that my least favorite set or the one that I've hated on the most for price point has been Evolutions, for sure. But not that Dragonite, for example, which isn't a reprint, but more of the.
You don't like Evolutions? What are we doing here? Come on.
more just the reprinted cards. The actual, like when I opened that set, the cards I actually wanted were actually the non-reprinted ones. Were the Mega Full Art Charizard, the Mega Full Art Blastoise, the Venusaur, and then the assorted EXs and these types of things. So, but my favorite set is base set, so I love those arts and I certainly love that stuff, but
I'm a big fan of like the early WotC art. I mean, really like Neo Genesis and earlier, like, I don't know, man, it just feels, I guess, nostalgic. I guess it's so classic.
Have you gotten into E-Series yet?
No, not yet. I've heard that it's a good one.
Take a look. Yeah, Take a look. I think you're going to fall in love with the arts.
And I loved everything you just said, because like, that's how I am about football. I just know so much about football cards. And I mean, with football, it's really weird. This is something I've kind of had an epiphany on. Like, no one knows football. If you go watch YouTube content about football cards, you won't. You're going to find me. That's it. No one's really making it.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of interesting. So me, I'm always like, oh, there's so many great deals. But what I like about with Pokemon right now is, I mean, I'm just being influenced. That's all it is. I'm just watching people and I'm like, I'm learning about all this. It's all new. I'm like, this is awesome. That's $1.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll pick that up. You know, this is great. I don't care.
Yeah. I mean, the best advice for someone who's like, for me, because I know the price history of literally pretty much everything,
Yeah.
I can basically snap by almost everything. So when I see lots, I can very quickly break down the prices, even if they're literally lots from, base set through, and the Japanese side and a lot of the niche stuff, not everything, but the vast majority. But that took 6 years of just like intense engagement in the hobby and being obsessed and looking at everything. So when you start, that's obviously not going to happen. And so
Yeah.
it's sort of just picking up recommendations. It's like, here, I'll give you 3 recommendations. Check out Versa Series Japanese to start getting into some exclusive Japanese art. Versa Series, check out the E Series for English to see some cool arts.
E-series.
Yeah, and go from there. Like those are 2 sets. Like you probably, if you love Pokemon, you're probably going to see those and be like, well, all right, now I have to own these.
Right, it's Hidden Fates and E-series. I'm about to drop $1,000. Let's go.
Yeah.
We can turn this into an eBay buying session. Let's go.
I think that yeah, what is a good investment is a completely different discussion, but and I'm be happy if off camera or wherever, if you ever want to reach out, I'd be happy to share my thoughts or opinion if you have specific questions or stuff like that.
I might have to ask you some questions. I'll ask you one here, I guess is you want to get the super chat first? I don't know.
Oh yeah, sorry. Poking Fun super chat says, Jake, I've been buying and buying and buying, but don't have endless money. Yes. Are you selling or just investing spare money? If so, what are you selling? Right this second, I am not selling. I sold a lot at the peak. And near the peak, right this second, I am actually just building stuff. And it's part of why I'm going for a lot of less expensive cards right now, because I don't have the cash to drop $5,000-$10,000 a week like I did at one point. So it's definitely slower, looking for deals, looking for under market stuff. I think that you have to figure out your situation. There's what you love and enjoy, and then there's like good financial prudence and risk management from a wealth creation long-term perspective. We are not financial advisors here, but generally speaking, putting 15% of your money into retirement, into stocks at least, before you put any money into Pokemon makes very good financial sense. Okay. Not everyone is going to do it. Some people love this stuff so much. If you have a business in it, you're going to put all your money into this, and I get that. But there's a lot of risk in that, and it's particularly if you don't have experience selling, you don't have a large network, and you haven't done it for that long. And it's just very addicting and fun. So it's very easy, and I sympathize to fall into those sorts of traps. But if I were you, if you haven't sold, definitely start to sell a little bit and just experience what that's like, because it'll also help you understand, like, how quickly can I liquidate a collection if I need the money? What is liquid? What actually sells quickly? What doesn't? And all those types of things are going to be important for you. Do you have any comment or response to that, from your experience or in the sports world, about like, when do I sell stuff? How often do I sell stuff? How much of my job money am I putting into this, versus I'm just sort of only spending what I'm making on the hobby?
Well, budgeting is a very important, it all starts with like a budget, and understanding your budget, and just kind of understanding how much you're comfortable putting in, each month or each period, however your life works. And then as far as it comes to selling, like a lot of times I buy cards and I know like at some point I'd like to sell this. And I try to remember, like, once it gets to 2x, with sports cards, like, I just need to be okay with selling it. And just like, I have to be happy with that, and it depends too, because sports cards are very cyclical and seasonal. So sometimes I'm like, well, I also kind of want to sell at this point, and I need to reevaluate then. Do I still want to sell here? Am I losing money at that point and still want to sell because I think maybe the market's just going down the wrong path, and I think I just need to move off of it anyway, stuff like that. But as far as Pokemon goes, I'm just 100% aligned with you. Like, I'm not selling. Like, I still think this stuff is so cheap. I'm not interested in selling Pokemon. I'm only interested in buying right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I that's how I feel about pretty much everything in Pokemon. There definitely are some things I think are quite a bit overvalued. And if I had them in my collection, I would be very tempted to sell, but I'm not even sure I would. Like it's that, like we're at a point where it's just not, this is not the type of environment that I try to sell in. It's why I prepared to be a buyer by selling 6 months ago, 8 months ago. It's why, so it's one of those things, right? 100%. I didn't buy 6 months to prepare for this, basically.
Okay, so I have a fun question for you and then a serious one.
Yeah.
So why is Talonflame in just every single freaking pack that I open? That's what I want to know. Why I have about 80,000 of those things. I'm pretty sure I've only opened 3 of those packs, but there's 80,000 of those. I don't know why I keep ripping that sucker, but serious question. What, like something I keep looking back to again, I guess just being my age, I keep looking back to like, there's base first edition, but forget that for a second. Let's look at first edition Jungle and Fossil, Gem Heroes, Team Rocket, the commons in those sets, like in good and well conditioned, right? Near mint or better, right? Is there any potential value for those in the future, or were they just printed too much to really have any value?
Yeah, the obvious answer is nobody knows. And then the first step, right? The first step beyond that, if we want to actually try to answer it or get some sense of it, the first step is how do you get out of bulk? So how do you move from bulk prices or bulk hollow prices, which depending on the store, depending on the time period could be, you might be able to get 25 cents a card or 20 cents a card. It might only be 3 cents a card, might be 10 cents a card. There are times when bulk's like 1 cent or 2 cents. So depending on the time, how do you move from there to $1? That's the first step. Once you get up to $1, you've made it. You are off the life support. You are off the shoebox filled with 1 million of them, and you are into sort of like has some value, has some sort of. Once it gets to $1, it's much easier for it to then move to $2, $3, $4, $5.
Got it.
This is, I think, important for people to know. It could take 20 years or never for you to get from 30 cents to $1. Once you're at $1, very likely it is something collectible. And over time, if Pokemon does well, it'll probably go up.
You're on the big stage. You're with the big boys once you hit $1.
And so that's what I would say roughly about that. Now, that's not including playability, because cards will reach $1 or $2 or $3 for playability. Then they go out of cycle and they go down in value, or they just will never go up from there. There's no way that's going to ever go up, probably.
Right. Yeah, but we were talking specifically like first edition, 2000, 1999, 2001.
Oh, stuff. I thought you were talking about like commons, uncommons, and hollows from like modern sets.
So sorry. From I was saying from Jungle, from Fossil, from Gem Heroes, Team Rocket. Sorry.
So we're talking about first edition commons, uncommons, things like that. Like what price do I think they could go to? And
not necessarily what price, but like when I looked at, it's fun. I was looking up Persian last night because I was telling you, I remember that was my first card. And a first edition and like a 9 goes for about $30, right? Regardless of case, it goes for about $30. Like, does that stuff like have a future where it goes up, or do you?
Sorry, tell me the card. Tell me the card again.
Persian Jungle
for $30 in a 9.
Yeah.
So I am paying $14 for that, $15 for that right now, to be completely blunt with you. And I bought a few at like 14, 15, 16, being very patient in auction. I think $30 is an okay price for that. I target rares at about $30 for a 9, just to give you what I'm looking for. But again, I pass up on 30. I'll pass up on 20 of them in a row and then buy a few. Yeah. It's just now, do I think $30 is a ridiculous price for that? No. Do I think if you're right and Pokemon becomes like the number 2 behind football, do I think that card will be $30? Absolutely not. I think that card, as the first appearance ever of Persian in Jungle, one of the most important sets of all time, as an uncommon, and it's not a common, and that matters in terms of the amount that are going to be pulled in each set. Yeah, that card, it would not shock me if that card is $200 one day.
Okay.
It would not shock me. Now, do I think it could ever get to $500? That would be insane. But I look at the sports market now and I'm like, how is it even possible that there's this much money in these cards? So I guess anything's possible. But that would be humongous, because there are hundreds of thousands of of those cards. Now in a 9 or 10 grade, how many do I think there will be in the future? If it gets to that price point, they're all going to be graded, right? Like, very small percentage of that card is graded right now. Probably like 1 to 3% of the total world population or something. If that, it's probably less when you think about all the lower condition ones. It's just all of that is so unfleshed out. But if you're very bullish, I could see that. And I think, but again, I was selling them all this year at like when they got to about 180, 100, 120, they may never get back to that. And that doesn't mean that Pokemon failed. It just means that people didn't understand the supply. There's a ton of those cards. When the price goes up, a lot more people grade them. Now that all that supply is in the market, that's what's pushed the prices back down,
Do you think those cards, like, let's go to same card, but we'll go to raw, do they make sense at like bulk rates there, like, under $1 or, and let's just say, I guess, roughly near mint, right?
It depends on what your business is. So, for me, no. But for businesses, for stores, for someone like you, if you want to grind those out and flip those, maybe, do you want to buy gem mint, shinies and then grade them baby shinies? Or do you want to, for $1, around $1, and some of the amazing rares for around $1? Or do you want to buy those like lesser first edition cards for around $1.50, $2, in some cases $3, $4, $5? I don't know. I don't know which one will do better. I like both. I think they're both fine. I think that they'll both appreciate over time. I think the fact that you can grade the modern and get 10s and 9s gives it more of that exponential possible growth possibility. And that's why I would tend to prefer that. And the fact that you can buy the 9s already graded and 10s already graded vintage for $15, $20, $30, it's much better to buy that, guys, than to buy the raw for $2, $3. Because unlike in modern, where it's actually better to buy the dollar card because they're all 9s and 10s, guys. In vintage, the dollar cards are 3s and 4s, and yet the slab price is selling for the same on that vintage card for a 9 as the slab price is selling for that modern card in a 9. And that makes absolutely no logical sense. So hopefully people can understand that. There's a lot of stuff like that, just like being here, being engaged, you'll be able to pattern recognize.
I got one more for you. We're right at time. This is a short one. It can just be yes or no. Is there an online platform that is like a vault where I can just like day trade? I don't want to say day trade like I'm trying to day trade, but I just mean like where I can buy very easily and it goes into my like account and then I can just hold it there and ship home if I want it.
PWCC vault.
PWCC.
Yeah, ComC. I've never
used. ComC has Pokemon?
I think so.
Oh my God. What am I doing? I love ComC. ComC is great. I didn't even know.
I could be completely wrong. Actually, now that I'm thinking, I don't think I've ever seen Pokemon on ComC.
Let me see.
So I buy a lot of like old like 1930s, 1940s cards that I get off of ComC and other places, like just war cards and all sorts of stuff. So, and Marvel I bought from there. I don't know why they wouldn't have Pokemon.
They do. They have it. So yeah.
I don't know why they wouldn't, but I'm not sure I've ever bought from them actually.
Yeah, people saying ComC. Yeah.
ComC, Evo, like Troll and Toad is like probably the best right now. That's the one that my Patreon partner Dan swears by.
Troll and Toad?
Yeah, to unload, particularly his raw stuff.
Oh, to unload.
Yeah, to sell. Yeah, but they'll hold it for you. They'll list it. They'll keep it, and then it'll like sell directly from there, and they'll ship it. And they don't charge that much, and it like takes all the work from you. It's really great.
Yeah, no. It's freaking, people complain about like fees and stuff, like with ComC and stuff. Like, you people are dumb. Stop it. Like you don't have to list this stuff. You don't have to do anything. Just pay your 50 cents and go home. My goodness.
Yeah. No. It's these are great services for people, and it's a great business, and they're able to provide really good value because they do it in such bulk, and I'm sure they make a lot too. So it's sort of a win. These are the types of ethical businesses that people build where it's a win-win for everyone, and it's sustainable. It's great.
Yep.
So before we end, I want to just give, any last thoughts, any last questions, comments, anything that you saw you want to respond to. And guys, we're going to do this again on Dakota's channel. So be talking more.
Yeah, I think, man, my goodness, it keeps happening. I've never lived with Zoom before. We all use, on the sports side, we all use StreamYard. Okay. So I don't know if it's that. I don't know. I've also have a new camera, so I'm still figuring that out too. But No, I mean, I try to keep up with chat there, and I feel like we kind of got to everything. And honestly, I had like a list of things I wanted to answer or ask coming in, and I think we got to all of them. So no, it was awesome. I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun, and yeah, thanks so much for like I guess let me ask all my ignorant questions. So ignorant in a good way, ignorant in the true definition of like I don't know. So
Oh, it's great to get your perspective on things, and I think I think this was probably really helpful for people, truly to sort of hear your opinions and where you're coming from the sports world. Thank you for agreeing to come on, hanging out. Please go take a moment if you guys can to go subscribe to Dakota's channel over there. The link will be in the description. If you want to continue to support me, please subscribe, like the video, the Patreon, click the link below when you buy stuff off of eBay. You guys know the deal. It is greatly appreciated. And I will continue bringing on great guests, like Dakota. We got some more coming up this week. And yeah, thank you so much, man. And we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, thanks so much. I appreciate it. Thanks, chat. Y'all were great. Dakota, my channel is Sports Cards Anonymous. Sports Cards Anonymous. Thanks.
Manny's saying is Larry Bird, the most overrated player. Yeah. There's some people who like to throw out like negative Celtics comments in like the last like 3 minutes of chat. It's a common. All right, guys. Good night. Thanks so much.